is going on, Rotogrinders? Dean here. It's Dean 7904 if you want to get all technical. It's 10:12 on the East Coast. Grant's fault, don't ask. 7:12 on the West Coast. 9:12 Tennessee time. It's, of course, that makes it time for the flagship show here at Rotogrinders. Grinderslive starting 3 hours. We're rounding up. Sure, why not? 3 hours NFL coverage. Taking you guys all in for the lock. It's myself. We're bringing the boys back together. I think this is a few weeks ago. It was good times for sure. Running it back. Batting first. Leading off. It's an ornery. It's Grant Nieper. What's going on, Grant? How are things in your world out there in the West Coast?
Well, it's good. It's a weird week, and I believe it's pronounced Torney, but you know what? I wasn't a teacher like you were, so I'll leave that to you. Yeah, things are good. I'm a real chalk donkey this week, and I've never had a narrower player pool except for when I was playing one lineup.
Yeah, this seems like an amazing week for tournaments, and for several reasons, just because the chalk's going to be pretty heavily condensed for multiple reasons, which we'll get into throughout the show, obviously. And, because of the Masters, we have this funky schedule where 5 games start at 1 o'clock and 6 games are on the late slate. So late swapping and pivoting and all that is more prevalent this week, more important to pay attention this week than I would say any other week. At least that's probably going to be the opportunity is going to be out there for sure. Let's bring in the creator and the curator of the Blitz, Derrick Carty. Are you with us? Good morning.
Good morning. How's it going? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we're happy to have you for sure. Yourself and Grant, I'm sure you're going to be combating back and forth throughout the show. It's been good times. And if you guys are both chalk donkeys, well, I mean, I guess Grant has to be a chalk donkey. Carty likes the chalk. He's more of a cash game savant. But does that mean I have to pivot to be a tournament player today? I don't really know. But
I mean, I can play the crazy off-the-wall GPP guy today if you want. I can, spike up my hair, give myself like the mad scientist kind of look and, just kind of say crazy shit because that's Grant's thing usually.
We have that guy. He's not on with us today. To play whoever you want. I can't. Grant, you can do the voice, right? I tried the other day and it failed terribly.
Just play whoever you want. Just play.
Carty, can you do that? Can you top that? Can you see it? Can you rate?
I probably can't. Just play whoever you want. Doesn't matter. Just as long as they're correlated, play whoever you want.
He might be on the
dude is the best. But like that shtick is just the greatest thing.
It's a really good, interesting, and today is one of those deals where there's going to be so much chalk, and we'll talk about it obviously as it progresses, but you can play some really, really strong plays, really good plays that are going to be mostly ignored just because you can't actually play everybody you want in one particular lineup. Do want to mention part due as far as the weather or running it back as far as that. Roth will be he'll be on at 12:30, give you guys the most up-to-date update, but I'm going to go ahead and drop this link in chat YouTube. What up, YouTube? Feel free to like and subscribe. Take a look at this as far as the weather. We don't really like to freak out about weather, but there's a lot of winds going on. Wind, we know more so than any other, rain, sleet, hail, any other elements. Sure, let's say that. I guess that's a word we can use. I'm not a weatherman. I don't play one on TV or the interwebs or anywhere. But so lots of wind going down. This Pittsburgh game kind of sneaky. I don't want to see out of nowhere, but it seemed to have risen to the levels of concern when it comes to Green Bay and Cleveland as well. This is color-coded. We have red in Cleveland, red in Green Bay, and red in Pittsburgh. The night game for New England, if you guys are playing on Yahoo or the Showdown Slate, there's orange for what it's worth. The Philly-Giants game looks better than it was speculated early on in the week. There is still going to be some wins, but not as bad as at least we first thought. Currently at yellow. Carty, I know you're a fan of domes. We'll talk about the domes soon enough and certain players specifically. So how do you factor that in as far as whether we don't like to freak out, and Vegas is telling us to freak out to some extent because the lines have plummeted, especially that Cleveland game. I think it's down, 9 points or so at the start of the week. How are you handling the weather in a general thought?
I mean, in general, those games, at least in cash games, I have no interest in any of those players for cash games. I think you can even probably throw, it's not as bad, but Philly Giants has not great weather in a normal week. That would be the bad weather game. So there's a lot of bad weather games, and there's quite a few domes and good weather games. And so, I just don't think you need to get cute and try to play these bad weather guys. Even in GPPs, it's not like I love any of these teams for stacks or anything anyway. So focusing more on the domes and other stuff, I think is the better approach this week.
Yeah, and it's going to condense ownership as well, too, for multitude of reasons. There is Johnson, the running back there for Houston's pretty chalky, going to be in a weather game, but he's more.
I should say the running backs in the weather games, they actually get a boost. So them, I have interest in for sure.
So, I guess we'll talk about that. I just have a thought. We'll tease it for a second, but the defenses know there's weather too. And the defenses know the teams are less likely to throw the ball 40 yards down the field. So they can step up a little bit. Maybe your efficiency takes a hit, but you get more usage. Obviously, dump off passes, the weather's not going to affect that nearly as much. But I feel like efficiency takes a slight hit because the defense knows, hey, we can creep up a bit. We can have 7 or 8 in the box, not in the box, that kind of thing. Is that something we've considered, or we don't care?
Historically, generally, there's not a lot of impact there. I mean, in isolated cases, I'm sure, some teams are going to do that, but I think it just gets offset by the extra volume the running backs are going to get anyway, even if that happens.
Grant, if you want to give your thoughts on that, by all means, we're going to dive in and talk about the slate by position. But I also want to know, how are you handling the slate? This is because of the Masters. The Masters was pushed back to this day. And I think CBS doesn't even have a 1:00 game or something like that because they have their Masters coverage. So that's why we have 5 games and then 6 games. How are you handling that? And basically all the news is out there, we think, except for Drake, which is a late game. And I thought he wasn't going to play. I thought they were going to save him for, the rematch of the game of the year on Thursday against Seattle. But the tea leaves, the news out there is suggesting he's going to play, which is kind of weird to me. I was trying to set myself up as far as getting all the shares. Why am I forgetting the other? The dude for Arizona. Edmonds, who had 28 touches last week and was an absolute disaster. But I was trying to set myself up to take advantage of that and people just being afraid. But as of right now, it looks like Drake's going to play, and everything else you basically know. Hawkinson is likely to give it a go. He has a toe, but he doesn't go for whatever reason. You got the outlaw Jesse James, I suppose. But we basically know as far as who's in and who's out. How are you setting yourself up as far as building your lineups when you consider late swapping for the 4:00 games?
Well, if you're playing Jesse James, you need to make sure you have a slot open for the badass Billy Gunn too, right? What's his slot open?
Grant does not get that reference. I think he's too young, or he just doesn't know. Either you know or you don't, and I don't think Grant knows it.
I tend to tune you guys out, so I didn't pay attention.
Grant, do you have a thought process today as far as you're attacking this 5 games and then 6 games later? And it's also backloaded with really appealing games, especially from a wide receiver perspective. And this is one of those slates where I think you could play a wide receiver in the flex spot more so than I normally do. It's front loaded with as far as running backs, as far as some cheapies, but otherwise, I don't think it's very deep at running back that's sort of popping, and the receivers are super deep, far as I can tell. Grant, general thoughts before we dive in.
I'm using 3 running backs right now, and one of those running backs is only in one lineup. So my plan is just lock in my running backs for the early slate, and lock in my running backs in the early games. And then every other slot outside of defense is all late games, all of them, every single slot. So I'm going to be losing a ton of money. Yeah. With just Mike Davis and Duke Johnson being the only guys that have played on my entire roster for all my lineups.
You chalk donkey. You're playing Mike Davis and Duke Johnson?
Yeah, got 100% of both. Duke Johnson's only pegged for 20%, but Carty, maybe you can speak to this a little bit. I feel like there's going to be a lot more dump offs in this game to Duke Johnson. So
I looked at that a couple of weeks ago when we had the win games, and historically there's not more dump offs in win games like you'd think there should be. But on average, there's not. Individual teams obviously can vary from that. But I think Duke's a great play anyway because he's going to get more volume on the ground. And he's just stepping into so much volume to begin with David Johnson out. So I do like Duke a lot this week.
So I wonder, you look at historical data. I don't know how far you're looking back, but there's obviously a pretty big disparity in how much running backs are used in the receiving games over the last 5-6 years. It was 10 years ago. All we had was Danian Tomlinson was going to be the only guy even remotely close to 100 receptions in a season.
Basically, the way I looked at it, I looked at win games, and then I looked at the game immediately before and immediately after the win game for the same teams, and I looked at how running backs were targeted like that so that there was no, any kind of bias or anything.
All right.
That's fair.
I know I derailed it for a second as far as running backs. Let's pull back and talk about the quarterback from the start. And, we're looking at least 30% ownership as far as quarterbacks coming from the same game. This Buffalo-Arizona game is absolutely popping for a multitude of reasons, Carty. If we're going to pick one as far as our cash game, and it's not that hard. Traditionally, you don't necessarily have it's the wants versus needs. I'd like to spend up at quarterback. A lot of times I can't, but just with all this running back value we'll talk about in a second, we already kind of teased them. We let the cat in the bag. Nobody knew about Johnson for sure. Nobody knew about Mike Davis for sure. But yeah, Carty, we're going to take Allen or we're going to take Murray. I think is our cash game quarterback. That's pretty much where I'm at because I can make it happen and it's not really hurting me as far as the rest of my lineup. Do you have a favorite or preference as far as one versus the other one?
I mean, if you can get Kyler, that's the one you want, but they're both great. They're both showing up in blitz lineups. Right now, I have Allen in my build because he's just the one that fits. I don't have that extra 500 get up to Murray. But if you do, then Murray's great too. But it's one of those two. If you're not playing one of those two, you're probably not doing it right today.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you need to save some salary, Goff, but we like the quarterbers that have legs.
Don't play Goff. Don't play Goff in cash games. It's a bad play. It's a bad play. There's nothing wrong with Goff, but he doesn't score points with his legs the way Murray does, the way Kyler does, the way Russell does. They're a run-heavy team to begin with, and they have a running game script here. So Goff I don't think he's going to get enough volume to get up to where Allen and Kyler are. He's not going to make it up with his legs. He's outdoors where these other guys are in a dome in a very fast-paced game. So just don't do Goff. That's a bad play in cash at least.
Well, that is a dome, isn't it? The Rams, for what it's worth.
They're on the road, aren't they? They're in Seattle.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, don't you feel like it?
Is that correct? Is it wrong on the RG page? It says Seattle at the Rams.
I might be wrong. Oh, you know what? Yeah, it is in. Okay, so then that is kind of a dome. It's got
you should probably clean up that egg on your face.
Yeah, that's my fault. I don't know how I missed that. It's like a semi-dome, so it's based on the wind direction. It does look like it's mostly a dome today. All right, fine, but still, I still think you don't play Goff.
Grant, I know you're a Josh Allen homer. You're a Josh Allen apologist. The matchup obviously is pristine. The biggest total, two faster teams as well. We're seeing some injuries in the secondary and the Buffalo side. Kyler Murray, if season-long guys don't talk about a season-long. I was talking to the guys on Wednesday. Rebar was saying, I think Murray's running back 10, running back 8 on the season or something crazy like that. He's getting so many rushing touchdowns, so many rushes as well. The floor is so solid. So I want to get either Murray or Allen. Do you have a preference? You prefer Allen as well? I'm sorry, you prefer Allen because that's your guy, or you think Murray is slightly better?
I prefer Allen slightly just because I want Diggs. If we're talking cash, I prefer Murray. I prefer Murray by a decent amount. But if we're talking tournaments, it's Allen just because I want to pair him with Diggs. I don't know if I should pair Murray with Kirk or with Hopkins. Seems like Hopkins is going to get a decent amount of ownership. Kirk might be a little bit overlooked, even though he's been crushing it the last few games. But to me, it's Kyler Murray. He's averaging a rushing touchdown a game. This is Lamar Jackson from last year, all over again. And it's the weirdest week where we have just an absolute lock and load, in my opinion, with Mike Davis, and I guess most people's opinions. And so generally, paying up for quarterback is something that's you sacrifice a decent amount. I can get almost everyone I want in my lineup outside of my tight end and my defense with Kyler Murray in there. So it's not a ridiculous thing to do to pay up at quarterback. I mean, this year we've seen very different. In the past, quarterbacks generally regress toward the mean. You're going to get 18 to 25 points out of your quarterback most weeks with a random outlier of 32 most weeks. This year, it's not even remotely the case. Kyler Murray has had over 30, half the games, over 40 in the last 2 games. Russell Wilson's had over 30 several times. Josh Allen has had over 40 several times. This is not a normal year. This is not a normal time for quarterbacks, and especially with the legs, with the ability to get multiple rushing touchdowns, with the ability to get the 100-yard rushing bonus. I always paid down at quarterback in the past. This week, I'm paying up in 100% of my situations. And if you look at the top 5 ownership projected quarterbacks,
And we are back. We apologize for that. Some technical difficulties. Carty was giving some absolutely fire takes while you guys weren't around. Grant, not so
lies.
much.
I can't believe you missed him. I was being the crazy GPP guy telling you all the crazy stuff to play that no one's going to play. Alex Smith stacks at 2%, Tua stacks.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be
Drew Lock
fantastic when he
stacks.
gets 18 points and then Kyler gets 45.
Well, obviously, Kyler could get 45, but that's the whole point of being contrarian. It's when the chalk doesn't go crazy, then you have a shot. You don't have to win it every week.
That's
great.
fine. If Kyler doesn't, then Wilson will. If Wilson doesn't, then Allen will. If Allen doesn't, then Herbert will. If Herbert doesn't, then Goff will. That's a nursery rhyme.
Yeah. So let's do a quick summary as far as quarterbacks. I feel like we missed like 3 or 4 or 5 minutes or something like that. We were just talking to ourselves, just having a conversation about quarterbacks. Greg, obviously you're on the chalk quarterbacks today. You're on the ones that are projected to do the most. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that you have the salary for it. And we've seen, the best quarterbacks crushing this year. And if it's not Allen, it's Murray. If it's not Murray, maybe it's Wilson. If it's not Wilson, it's Herbert. And Rodgers, there's some weather there, obviously. We talked about the weather earlier. We'll drop a link once again for you guys who just joined us as far as the weather that's lurking today. Of course, Kevin Roth will be on later today, 12:30 Eastern, taking your questions. We'll be asking questions and taking questions regarding weather as well. Noto and Tambo are going to be joining the show after us for what it's worth. Grant, quick synopsis as far as your quarterbacks, and then Carty, you jump in there.
2 of Wilson, Murray, Allen, or Herbert will go for 40 points. Just play them. Carty, beer bet?
Play Kyler or Allen in cash games, nobody else. Play, them in GPPs, Wilson in GPPs, and then off the board stuff, Lock stacks, Smith stacks, Tua stacks, stuff like that I do like.
Your favorite quarterback, Carty, amongst like Tua, Alex Smith, and Lock?
Tua stacks make the most sense because you know where the volume is. You play Tua with Parker, Jakeem, and Gesicki, and you run it back with Keenan Allen. That's it. I like Alex Smith stacks, but the run backs from Detroit, there's various ones you can do, just play whoever you want. Play whoever you want.
Play whoever you want.
There you go. Smash the over on that. Also, smash the like button if you guys are in chat. We much appreciate that. You're going to be seeing like a lot of the lineup HQ stuff that we're building throughout, and Devin, I believe, is going to be showing off some ownership as well. If you want to use this tool at your own leisure amongst all the other tools here at RG, and the live shows and the expert rankings and Grant's content and my content and all sorts of good stuff in there, get yourself $5 off the first month. Look at that. Devin's way ahead of us. He's already dropped the link for us. Not for you guys because you're behind us, but yeah, he dropped a link in chat for you guys. Get $5 off your core for sports, football, baseball, basketball coming back next month already, and golf as well. Hopefully you guys are having a fun sweat as far as the Masters today. All right, running backs, no surprise here. Massive ownership, especially with 2 key guys, Mike Davis, stone minimum against against Tampa Bay. It's a bad matchup, but who cares? Volume, and also he's going to catch a bunch of passes as well. So he really pops on DK.
Dean, here's the thing, though. 20% of people are not going to play him because of the run defense or because of some other crazy reason. Like, imagine that. Yeah,
well, I mean, you have to play him in your cash games. I mean, that's absurd. And I think I will say for tournaments, he's more fadeable on FanDuel than he is on DK because, the PPR and also scoring equity and all that. So, and I much prefer not playing him on FanDuel in tournaments if I have to pick one. But on DK, and you kind of talked about it, Grant, already, how do you get away from 4K on DK from Mike Davis? Like, what do you need? I don't like the whole value conversation. If he gets 4X, like he's probably going to get around 15 to 19 points. That's probably like most likely scenario, I suppose. What is he projected for? Yeah, 18 and change. Grant, Mike Davis, what are you doing here?
I have 100% Mike Davis. I have 100% Duke Johnson. And I have 28% Miles Sanders. That's my running back exposure. That's the entirety of it. I have no other running back in the flex. There's no point. If you want, play Aaron Jones. Yes, the volume is probably going to be there. But he's going to be 33% owned. We currently have him pegged for that. And that's just, like, I get it. But that's not worth playing for me because he's 7.1K. We have Michael Thomas, we have Stephon Diggs, we have DK Metcalf, we have Cooper Kupp, we have McLaurin, and we have Keenan Allen, all in that same price range.
Yeah.
I'm just going to use one of them in my flex instead of Aaron Jones. So there's no point in me using Aaron Jones. I have 0 ownership in Aaron Jones over on DK. I'm not going to use him. Kamara, I get it, but with Michael Thomas back, he could go for 30. He can always go for 30. I don't care. Like, Duke Johnson can go for 20. And I'll take that with a price savings. We have Miles Sanders, who I think is probably the only other guy that I really want to use. He's the only guy I currently have. he's going up against the Giants. The Giants have been a better team recently, but he's a fantastic back. He's not going to be high enough owned. It's going to be a little bit of a win game, so he could get a lot more usage here. I like Sanders. I'm not really worried about that. Connor, you can use. Swift, you can use. Edmonds, if Drake ends up not playing, he's the one guy that I would swap over in my flex spot. He's the only real thing that I'm watching out for as a possible late swap situation. But I don't see the point in using any of the other guys. I see no point. Maybe James Robinson just because of usage and because things are weird and because if they get ahead, they might have to – there's a chance that Green Bay is down 10 points in the third quarter.
There's a chance because it's football and weird things happen, but that's unlikely, it seems.
It's unlikely, but there's still a pretty decent chance. This is
and Robinson's cheap enough and gets enough volume where even if they just kind of keep it close, I think he's a pretty solid play.
Yeah, Carty, Jill's in chat talking about this, and I know Grant mentioned Sanders as well. And he's one of those guys I just don't have a good read. I don't have a good read on Sanders today. Where do you stand on it? Because I feel like it's just not. I don't know. I'm going to have some, but I don't feel good about it either way. Do you have a take on Sanders?
Yeah, early in the week I thought he was going to be sneaky and he'd be a good play. At this point, he's not sneaky. People are on him. He's not as good as the 3 cash game guys. He's not as good as Davis, Duke, or Aaron Jones. So in cash, you're not playing him for sure. And then in GPPs, if he's going to be at the same ownership of those guys, I don't really see the reason to play him because he's not at that level. He's going to be too high owned. I'd rather, if I'm going off of those 3, play, like Grant said, definitely play wide receivers in your flex. Don't play 3 running backs in GPPs. But you can play, I think you can play Swift. You can play Gio Bernard. You can play Leonard Fournette. If you do even a mini stack of Leonard Fournette and Robbie Anderson in your non-Davis lineups, you get leverage off of that. And I think the value on both of those guys is great.
I feel like that's the sneaky game that nobody's talking.
Yeah, you can do a full stack there. Just stack up Teddy with Robbie, with DJ Moore, fade Mike Davis. The run back from the Bucks is not clear. There's 5 guys you can run back with, but you get leverage off of.
When you're playing a 4-play, you don't really need to run it back.
Yeah, I just don't really know what to do with that game, and I feel like that game can kind of ruin things to some extent. Grant, what's your reasoning for not playing Aaron Jones? Just because that's one way to be different?
33% ownership. Aaron Jones literally 6 weeks ago was a guy that are okay, play him in GPPs. We don't know what his volume is going to be. Yes, his volume has gone back up. He's still only getting 15 to 20 touches a game.
His volume is not great, but the wind is going to help with his volume. And
are we sure about that? There's always the chance that he doesn't get volume, and they kind of spread around between all the running backs there. So it's not a for sure thing. And yes, Jacksonville has a terrible defense that definitely plays into it, but he is very, very touchdown dependent. Look at the games. He's had one game where he didn't get a touchdown. He ended up with 12 points. There's no guarantee that he's going to end up with a touchdown. It can get snaked from Adams. It can get snaked from any of the other wide receivers or tight ends. It can get snaked from any of the running backs. His volume his points total is largely based off of touchdowns. And in a wind game, there's a decent chance with those gusts and with that constant wind being crosswind, this ends up a 13-5 game. Not 13-5, 13-6, unless there is a safety. Who knows? This may not be a high-scoring game. And when you get a guy with that much dependency on touchdowns in a game where they're probably going to be stacking up the box a decent amount, where there's not going to be a lot of downfield passing, I don't see any point in using Aaron Jones at 35%.
In a GPP, I'm completely on board with that.
Play him in cash. I've
kind of been a non-Aaron Jones guy for a while because he only gets 55% of the carries. He's very touchdown dependent. So in GPPs, I think that's totally fine.
By the way, DK Sportsbook, Aaron Jones to score today, Carty. What do you think the odds are in Aaron Jones scoring?
I saw it yesterday. Someone told me it's negative 375 or something really high.
Minus 335, which is just insane for a running back. That's a ridiculous number. Carty, let's just clean this one up because we see John B in chat. Hey, chat, what's up? Like and subscribe. I do appreciate that. Imagine playing Mike Davis in GPPs. The 15 points going to be a GPP winner for sure. Sarcasm font. So explain why you would still play Davis in some tournaments.
Because he works with the rest of your lineup, especially if you're doing a non-chalky stack. Why not play a chalky guy with it? So
he's 4K.
Yeah, and he opens a lot of stuff up. I don't think you have to go 100% on him, but in lineups where he makes sense, play him. In lineups
think about the 2v2 swap. think about the 2v2 swap. You're either playing Davis and Kyler Murray, or you're playing Aaron Jones and Tua. Like, yeah, it's pretty obvious that you can get 40 points out of any one of these top-tier quarterbacks. Or you can think about it with the wide receivers. Who are you going to play at 5K outside of Parker? Like, you swap Davis to something like Aaron Jones, and you end up getting down from Michael Thomas down to what? John Brown, Deontay Johnson, any one of those guys. Like, it's just not worth it for me.
Does anybody want to sell Jacobs? Pretty reasonable price today. He's going to see an interesting amount of ownership, 12%, give or take, as far as what we're seeing. Gibson, I just wish he played a little bit more. McKissick is just stealing all of his catches. Connor, maybe for a bounce-back game against Cincinnati. Game script tells us that could be interesting. Of course, they're going to have to run the ball a bunch more in theory because of the wind. Also, I like Connor, playing him with the Pittsburgh defense. I'm running that back one more time. Anybody interested in that, or is that a terrible idea?
I mean, I don't love it. I thought Connor was a pretty bad play last week. Like, he's just, he doesn't get a ton of volume. The weather sets up all right, but I just think there's better plays.
Can I throw McKinnon your way as well, too? You mentioned Bernard, and Bernard, he's going to have a good chunk as far as what's going on. Terrible matchup, obviously, and I like that Pittsburgh defense one again. I know it didn't work against Dallas, but if we're going to see 40 dropbacks in that Pittsburgh defense, you might see 8 or 9 or 10 sacks for Pittsburgh, especially in that weather, so that wouldn't surprise me. Love the quarterback there, but this is not going to be as weak as far as I can tell. Carty, McKinnon, can we see McKinnon potentially get 20 cheap touches?
We could. I think on FanDuel, his price is pretty good, right? So, like, over there, I can definitely see him. I guess on DraftKings in a GPP, if you want to take a shot, especially, if you're doing like a mini stack or something, run him and Thomas and hope he's getting a bunch of dump offs while they're catching up or something like that. I think that's fine.
All right, let's hit up receiver. We got to move on. And like we talked about it throughout the show, receiver is just stacked. It's so good at the top. Diggs at Arizona. Devontae Adams is super expensive. And I know Carty had a whole thread talking about it. And, yeah, he had 3 touchdowns in the last win game, but he was basically acting as like their goal line running back and then extension of the run game. He got a 1-yard touchdown pass. Probably not repeatable. Not a ton of yards, but sure, in tournaments, I suppose, why not? Kupp, Allen, Lockett, Parker on the cheap, Woods as well, Hopkins too. And then McLaurin, this is my issue with McLaurin is like all these other guys have competent quarterbacks, and then he's got Alex Smith, and I know he's been doing it with Kyle Allen, so like why can't he keep doing it? And it's not like we're getting a discount. He's been priced up based on how well he's been doing, so I'm conflicted. I get it, but who separates from the bunch here for you?
I mean, there's no real separation. Obviously Devontae's the top guy, but not by nearly enough to justify paying.
He's not the top guy.
Okay. I'm glad I'm not the only one who doesn't really like Devontae then.
He's not even the top guy for raw points.
Who's the top guy for Diggs, I assume?
No.
Hopkins?
We talked about this pre-show.
Michael Thomas?
Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised but I mean, it all depends with Michael Thomas on where you think his usage and volume is going to land. If he's 35% targets like he was last year, he's the best wide receiver play by raw points by a lot on this slate. It's just where is he going to fall? And
so if he's at 35%, he's the best by a wide margin. If he drops down to a 30, where is he at? Still the best play?
Still the best by a small amount. Most places seem to have him like high 20s, which might be too low. But that does seem to be based on props, based on basically every projection. That's kind of where people are expecting him to be, which kind of just puts him in the mix with these other guys.
Oh man, Hopkins. Oh, you mentioned Thomas. Thomas on DK. Yeah, 7.4K. Are we ever going to see him that cheap again, Carty, after this week?
Probably not. I really hope he crushes because he should be in like a lot of your GPP lineups, possibly your cash lineup. Like he is a very good play. He's going to be half the ownership of Diggs, probably Adams rather. Probably half the ownership of Kupp. But he's like the same play or better play than most of these guys.
What are the big decision points for you as far as cash games today? Is it tight end? Are you paying up for Waller? You're not paying up for Waller? I think another one in DK specific is, are you punting with Grant or you're not punting with Grant, who's 3K? And
I think those are the two big decision points. And for me, I'll play Grant and Waller. I think Waller's a great play. I think Grant is a great play. Without Preston Williams, without Isaiah Ford, without Myles Gaskin, Like he's basically the number 2 or the number 3 option there, and he's 3K. So I like Grant a lot.
Yeah, I know some people are talking about Conley, but I just don't trust the weather in that game.
Yeah, with the wind, there's
why not pump
no
with
need to play over
Amendola?
Grant.
Amendola, come on, man.
Amendola's a great play.
Dean, his target shares without Galladay in there is what, 10 targets, 7 targets, 7 targets? He has a higher A-dot than Marvin Jones. I still think he does. He only thing that's happened, he hasn't gotten a touchdown. If he's going to get 7 to 10 targets at 3.9K, and he's probably going to end up with anywhere from 40 to 90 yards, possibly 100. If he gets into the end zone, he is just absolutely crushing. He's coming in at
if anybody gets in the end zone.
Huh?
He doesn't get in the end zone for one. He's got if he his first time he did it all season long. And yeah, it's great. He got 10 targets last week, but before that 4, before that 4, before that 2, before that 3. I know Galladay.
Oh, it's almost like Galladay was playing. It's almost like he was the number 3 wide receiver instead of the number 2. It's almost like it's entirely situational.
Well, I mean, Parker's 5K. It's not that hard to find salary, so I can make the argument that I feel better with Parker.
It is hard to find salary when you're playing 3 7K wide receivers and you're playing Kyler Murray or Josh Allen.
Oh, I mean, look, I'm not saying Amendola is not playable, but I'm not excited at the prospect of rostering Amendola. That's sort of my thought process.
But you're excited about Grant? I like Grant too, but if you have the money to get to Amendola, he is the better raw play than Jakeem Grant, and he's still really cheap himself.
Josh Reynolds is 3.5. He's a better play than both those guys.
No,
he's not.
What's going on here? You guys just turned on me. I like
I've
Reynolds.
never been on your side.
Oh, that's fair. Status quo. So let's kind of revisit the big names at the top. Grant, how do you separate Adams? Well, I know you're not a big fan of Adams, but like Diggs and Thomas and Hopkins and McLaurin, Keenan Allen, who's just an absolute machine there. I know Miami's better to run against as opposed to throw on, but he always seems to get his. Lockett, what's the deal with Lockett and Metcalf? And people are talking about the secondary or Ramsey, and who cares about quarterback wide receiver matchups anyway? Yeah, and John Brown, I like him more so on FanDuel than on DK, but I think he's super playable as well. And Kirk, I like in tournaments too. Probably can't get there in cash, but I like the cheap pieces in that Buffalo-Arizona game in addition to the expensive pieces as well. Grant, give me some thoughts as far as the elite wide receivers, how you're separating players from others.
Far and away, Michael Thomas is the best play, and it's not remotely close. We're assuming that he's going to go down drastically in target share, but guess what? He's not. He's absolutely not. We have a 2-game sample size, one of which was a blowout versus one of the best defenses in the league, and one of which was a game where he got injured. We have an entire season last year with the only difference being that that Drew Brees has more of a noodle arm, and they added Sanders. That's pretty much it. So he's going to get the same target share. He put up 30-plus points against this team last year. Granted, it was a very different scenario, hugely scoring game. But he was putting up 20 points plus every single game for 8 weeks straight with a few 30s in there. He's going to get 10-plus targets in this matchup. He's going to get 100 yards in this matchup. He's probably going to get a touchdown in this matchup. San Francisco defense is not that great. Michael Thomas is going to get force-fed because Drew Brees can't throw the ball down the field. And it's just a real simple scenario. He is drastically underpriced, and he's not going to be 30% owned. You go with him. Next up, it's Keenan Allen. He gets 10 targets every single game with Herbert. It's just like clockwork. If he doesn't get injured, Keenan Allen is the second best. Diggs, best matchup on the board, going up against this probably now the highest-paced team recently in Arizona. He's going to get force-fed. He's going to get tons of targets, and it's an ideal matchup. I don't care about his ownership, but Michael Thomas is the best play. Then you got Kupp, you got Metcalf, you got all those other guys that are just slightly behind those guys. But Michael Thomas is far and away the best play on the entire slate at any position.
I love to hear that, especially with Mike Davis on the slate to say that's something. Yeah, I've been trying to talk myself.
Okay, sorry, Mike Davis. I'm just disregarding as a free square and bingo.
Yeah, I've been trying to talk myself onto Thomas for cash games because it feels so close between all these guys, and I think Thomas's range of outcomes are maybe a little wider than some of these other guys. But he's theoretically should be such a great play, especially if he goes back to what he was doing. But Terry McLaurin, I don't think Grant mentioned him. He's right in that conversation too. He's amazing. Thomas, McLaurin, Diggs, Keenan Allen, you're probably playing 2 of them in cash games.
what the problem is, what's going to annoy me is that I'm going to lose because I picked the wrong 2 of that bunch to somebody else that picks the correct 2. And like, there's not a lot separating.
The correct 2 is Michael Thomas and Keenan Allen.
Yeah. Well, I think Michael Thomas is better on DK than on FanDuel. We should clarify that. If some people, you could certainly buy Michael Thomas on FanDuel, but I'm not getting there in cash because I don't think I am. I make more than one cash lineup. On DK, I'm probably going to play Thomas, at least on one of my cash iterations. Carty, Cup or Woods?
I mean, in a raw sense, Cup. I don't think either are cash plays. I think Cup's a little below that other tier of guys. Not by a lot, but by enough where I'm not really considering him.
You going to take on that, Grant?
Cup's my neighbor, so.
He is?
He was growing up.
Oh, well, no, he's since moved on. He's moved.
Cup was my neighbor 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, there's a thing called past tense and present tense. Learn it. I don't know why I'm being a jerk. I saw somebody in chat say, dude on the left is mad. I don't know who's in the left. I don't know which one of us is mad.
It's me.
Oh, are you mad? Are you okay?
I feel like I'm the least mad person at RG.
I called you ornery earlier today for no particular reason. All right.
We haven't mentioned Lockett in this group. He's actually like, you get a discount on Lockett relative to these other guys. He's what, 6.5K? Is he a guy you're considering at all? Or is he just like, you just don't know if it's going to be a Lockett week or not, and so you just can't do it?
He had one game, but basically with those 20
he had 2 games.
13
He
targets.
had 25% of the games.
That was against Dallas.
But his mean is still really good. Like his target share is still like 27% for the year, which is like the same as most of these other guys we're talking about. And it's Seattle. So like Seattle as an underdog. So like, I don't know. Is he going to be chalky? Like the ownership rate on him has seemed really high all week. Is it still there?
I think it still will be because people are worried about Ramsey. And I mean, you look at last week, the 1K discount, everyone went over to Lockett.
Yeah.
We don't know who Ramsey's going to play, and like what I was hearing, and we don't dig into that too much, obviously. But Ramsey's been jumping all over the place. He hasn't necessarily been on one guy all season long. And the coach talked about the idea of a fun matchup, Ramsey against Metcalf, and of course, we're just going to skim over Metcalf, who's been unreal, just amazing. But of course, you can play him in tournaments as well. Carter, you want to talk about Parker? Anybody else that we should sort of mention as far as receivers?
I'm just curious because I am stuck on Lockett a little bit. Like I'm considering him. Like if you go down from one of these 7K guys to Lockett, you can get up from Josh Allen to Kyler Murray. Like if builds come together like that, like is that something at all, or you just say no, just play Josh Allen and play one of the 7K guys?
Grant?
Yes.
Dynamite drop in, Grant.
Just play the 7K guys.
All right. That's what I wanted to hear. Okay, because I've been like tempted by Lockett, but like I really don't want to do it.
Don't play him in cash. I get his target share is still pretty decent, but tournaments he's just absolutely. We know his upside. We know the connection him and Russell have. This isn't just a 1-year thing where he's had a few random breakouts. We look back to last year. He had several games in the single digits. I think he had 6, but he also had multiple games. He had 4 games over 28 points. Like he's a boomer bust. Occasionally, Russell Wilson and him get a good connection. He's always going to get the target share, but it's all whether Russell Wilson is able to drop in that beautiful 60-yard pass to him. Like I think, wasn't it last week where he dropped or that just was barely out of bounds, whatever it was. Yeah. He was 160K pass away from, instead of having 8 points, having 20 points.
Look, he was throwing the ball away if we're thinking of the same play. It was pretty incredible. Russ is just awesome. Judy, any interest in running back Judy? All those air yards paid off last week on the comeback, and they're in a dome once again. Carty, Jerry, Judy, did he do anything for you?
Yeah, in a stack for sure, not in cash. But I mentioned liking Denver this week.
I think he's interesting on FanDuel. I think he's playable.
Oh yeah, on FanDuel he's playable in cash.
Yeah, I think he's playable in cash and FanDuel at 5.8. I'm not sure if I'm going to end up there, but if I do, I'm not going to blow the whole thing up. Give me a summary here as far as receivers, Grant.
100% Michael Thomas, 80% Keenan Allen, 60% Diggs, 40% Hopkins, 30% Metcalf, Lockett, and end of story. And Amendola is the best cheapie on the board.
I don't know why he goes down like Reynolds. He's 3.5K. And he's on the field 60, 70% of the time. He's facing Seattle, and it's cheap access to a good game.
Amendola, he's 3.9K. He's on the field 90% of the time, and he's getting a massive target share as opposed to Reynolds, who has Cup and what's the word? Who else is Stafford going to throw it to? Marvin Jones.
Yeah, Marvin Jones is
Marvin
good,
Hall.
right?
Yeah, he's great.
Marvin Jones he's $12 on Yahoo, and I'm playing him because he's $12 on Yahoo. But I'm begrudgingly playing some Marvin Jones today.
I think Reynolds is fine. I just like Amendola better.
Thank you for upgrading him to fine. I feel better about it now. Anything else that's worth talking about here as far as receivers, Carty? You want to talk about tight ends, which is terrible today. We kind of teased the Waller 7K on FanDuel. I believe he's 5.9 on DK. No Kelsey, no Kittle, no Andrews, if that matters or not. That's on the Sunday night game. And then it's like Goddard's being thrown out there. Evan Ingram's going to be getting a ton of
Goddard
targets.
thing doesn't make any sense. Like, why are people playing Goddard? Like,
he ran a bunch of routes last week or 2 weeks ago, I guess it was.
Yeah, the Goddard thing is the thing that I think makes the least sense of any play on this slate, because like he's a fine play, but like if he's going to be the highest owned tight end, like I'm asking myself, like why? It's the lowest game total on the whole slate. It's bad weather. Everyone is healthy there now for the most part, except for Ertz. So like you have Alshon, you have Rigger, you have Miles Sanders, you have Goddard, you have Fulgham still doing stuff. Like what are people actually expecting from Goddard? He's going to get like 3 catches for 40 yards, and if he scores a touchdown, great. If he doesn't, which I mean, with all those bodies, like there's no guarantee of that. He's just like he's going to get like 8 points, and he's going to be the chalk guy. Like it doesn't.
Because there's nobody. He's cheap, right? He's 4.2K.
He's not even that cheap. Like I don't know. Like if you're trying to jam in Devontae Adams, you have to go cheap at tight end, and I'm guessing that's where the Goddard ownership is going to come from. But like, I don't get it. Like he's just not that great of a play.
Can you promise me that Noah Fant's not going to re-injure his ankle? Because if he plays 4 quarters, I'm in. But,
yeah, I would love that. But I can't. I played Noah Fant last week, and David Johnson, and Justin Jackson, and that was a fun week. Let me tell you.
It's a bad week for your boy.
But yeah, like tight end's so bad this week. Like just spend up for Waller. Like just play Waller. Like all the reasons we're saying, like, well, what about this guy? He's not just play Waller for those reasons. He's in a dome. He gets wide receiver 1 volume. He's at a terrible position. He's under 6K. Let's just play Waller.
I can't afford Waller.
Well, just play him anyway.
Grant, you know who I bet you're going to get like a pinch of? Jacob Hollister at 2.6K. I see you as a Hollister guy.
No, I got Greg Olsen.
Greg Olsen.
Oh,
yeah,
boy.
there we go.
Okay, so how do we know who the guy is amongst those two? Like if there is one, maybe the trick answer.
It could be Disley.
Yeah. Why does Seattle have so many tight ends?
I mean, that's what they like to do. Yeah, no, it's ugly. I actually do have one lineup with Greg Olsen, mostly just because it's what fit, and I had Russell Wilson in there. I'm not happy about it. I'm actually very unhappy about it.
Yeah.
But tight end's ugly. Yeah, Waller's what you want to play, but it's a little bit tough to do. I might try and get a little bit more of him, but the interesting one is Jordan Reed. Yeah. No, I don't know what his snap share is going to be. Obviously, he was injured, and then he came back from injury, and he really didn't do too much. But we had that one game versus the Jets. Like it's an interesting spot here where he's 3.5K. He's going to come in almost no ownership. If his snap count does go up because Kittle being out and because one more week of rest, he could potentially be in for a pretty big game at low ownership. There's not really a ton in the 3 to 3.5K range to love. Like most of the good tight end plays are in the 4K range. So I just don't know what to do about it. And I'm throwing him into at least 25% of my lineups, and I'm not terribly happy about that.
Jordan Reed for 25%? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm playing 4 lineups, so.
Oh, well, okay. Oh, well, that's only I'm playing him in one lineup. That's misleading, Grant.
That's stats. It's accurate.
It's mathematically correct, but it's still misleading. Carty, we're not playing. Josh Reynolds is the better. I understand it's different positions, but Josh Reynolds is a better player than Jordan Reed. We can at least say that.
I will say that, yeah. Although I don't hate Jordan Reed as especially in like a Thomas like secondary staff. Like I think that's pretty good. Dawson Knox with Tyler Kroft out is 2.9K in your Buffalo stacks. Like that'll make them different, because everyone's going to want to play it. But I don't think there will be a lot of Knox in there.
You used to tout Carty once upon a time. How do you led the charge in this one? Tight ends against Arizona. So here you go.
I did not take the charge there, but
oh yeah, he would not stop talking about how that's all that matters. The flow chart is the most important thing.
I like the one who knocks at 2.9K. Sure, why not? I don't. Another cheap way to get a piece of that game for sure. And Allen seems to get like goofy guys touchdowns, so they don't give the real good players Brown or or Diggs touchdowns for whatever reason. Hockenson, certainly interesting. I mentioned him earlier in the show. He's got a toe, but he's expected to play. I just kind of threw it out there with Jesse James. I assume Hawkinson's good to go. Actives and inactives come on at 11:30, of course, for the early games. Tambo is going to be joining the show momentarily. Not momentarily, but when we step aside in about 7 minutes or so. We will have some time for some questions from chat, which we never do. Somehow we talked about the slate. We got knocked off for a few minutes, and we still have some leftover time. So.
Well, it's because my player pool is like 15 players. That's all I had to talk about.
The chat wants to talk about Carty. They want to talk about Ingram. He's been getting a bunch of targets of late.
Yeah, I mean, he's fine. He has been getting a bunch of targets. He gets some of those weird, like, Trey Burton goal line, packages where he has a little bit of, like, rushing touchdown equity. But it's still, the lowest game total on the slate. It's bad weather. And you don't want to overreact to 3 weeks worth of targets. Like Golden Tate's going to play this week, which is going to make a difference. There's going to be more bodies there. He's fine. But, again, I think just pay up for Waller. Like, there are ways for Ingram to fail.
Why not Austin Hooper coming back from that appendicitis?
Wind is the only thing. If there wasn't wind, I think Austin Hooper, you can make a strong case for as the play.
He's not a big ADOT guy for what it's worth.
Yeah.
They're asking about Gerald Everett. I think he's interesting. Like, you could play him, sure. And they're asking for the Millie Maker. Why not? He's super cheap on DK.
Why not Higbee?
I think Higbee's kind of dusty. I think Everett's kind of passed him by.
He's been injured for a while.
Yeah, tight end's so gross today. It's just so bad. Let's knock out some defenses. Favorite defense for you, Grant? And Eric wants to know in chat, do we pay up for the Packers? Which is like, they're not a great defense, but, the elements are in their favor, and they're facing a putrid Jacksonville team, which I know their quarterback had a nice spin move and threw like an 80-yard touchdown pass, but I don't believe that he's any good. Defenses, your thoughts?
My 3 favorite defenses: the Bengals, the Rams, and the Jaguars.
They're cheap.
They are super cheap. They are super cheap. Both the Bengals and the Jags are playing in extreme win games. And the Rams, if they're ahead and Wilson is chucking, he's had multiple, 3 interception games? No reason it can't happen again.
Carty, your favorite defenses? I think the Rams are interesting actually on DK at 2.2K because Donald's going to get some pressure. They got Ramsey in the secondary. I know, Russell's awesome, but I definitely think that they're going to get a couple sacks there.
Russell can take sacks. They're fine. I mean, defense doesn't matter. Play whatever defense you want. But I think Rams are fine. I think Lions are fine. I think Saints are fine. Browns, Giants, whatever fits.
Pittsburgh I got on FanDuel, but it's really hard to get to on DK. Not too hard. Actually, I could if I really want to force it, but I mean, I'm sure, Carty, you're not paying 4-4 for Pittsburgh on DK. That's not happening for you.
No, definitely not.
But they might sack Burrow 9 times.
It is possible. And we have the win there. So, they're a great play. It's usually pretty dumb to pay that much unless they just kind of fit that way in your stack.
All right. Some questions are starting to load up in here in chats. Carty, can you fade Mike Davis on FanDuel? I think you can. Not in cash, but in tournaments.
In tournaments, you can. I mean, in tournaments, even on DK, you can, depending on your lineup. But in cash, even though he's super free square on DraftKings, you still play him in cash on FanDuel too. Grant,
do you like Gesicki today? He's another
Yes.
tight end that could be fine.
Yes.
Yep, and your Dolphin stacks for sure.
Carty, Robert Woods in cash as a wide receiver 3, in or out?
No.
Why don't you like Robert Woods?
Because you have Keenan Allen and Michael Thomas.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
And Woods' volume has been down this year. He's not even getting 20% of the targets. So, I normally love Woods. Last year I played him a lot. But on this slate with all these great 7K wide receivers, just spend a little more and get one of them. You don't need to play Woods.
There's a question
don't be dumb,
about
Dean.
There's a question about the blitz here, Carty, for the opto, and I'm sure it's just fractional points. But why not just play the Lions defense to get Kyler? I don't know if is Kyler now popping? Is it Allen right now it's popping, or it's both?
It's a mix of them, but Allen's in the top couple, I think, right now. Yeah, do that if you want. Defense really doesn't matter that much. So if you just want to play Kyler and go down at defense, do that. That's totally fine.
Here's a defense doesn't matter question for Grant. Diggs and the Bengals versus Michael Thomas and the Rams. Well, I know Grant's going to say Michael Thomas and the Rams.
Yeah, but I play both. I have one lineup with the Rams, Diggs, and Michael Thomas, and I have one lineup with the Bengals, Diggs, and Michael Thomas. Hunter Henry is fine on Yahoo.
Yeah, I think he's like 13 or 14 bucks over there, and I made some Yahoo lineups, and I couldn't quite get to Goddard or Ingram, who were like 14 or 15, maybe 16. I made those a couple hours ago. I don't recall, but yeah, Henry's a couple dollars cheaper, and he's been kind of terrible and disappointing. My theory on Hunter Henry, Carty, is that if his name wasn't Hunter Henry, if it was like John Smith, we wouldn't think we expect a lot of him because he's got a really cool
It is
name.
a cool name.
That's my theory.
And he's a guy who's been good before. Like, you want Hunter Henry to be good, but like Herbert really hasn't targeted Henry that much. He has like a 15% target share with Herbert in games that Keenan Allen's been healthy. Like, it just hasn't really been there.
It's just a different price point, Carty, but they're asking about
yeah, I mean, if he's really cheap on Yahoo, then that's probably fine, I guess. I mean, I don't know what Yahoo pricing's like, but
he's like 13 bucks over there, maybe 14 bucks. It's a couple dollars cheaper than Ingram. Carty, they're asking about Grant versus Amendola. I don't know if it's a different price point on DK. You're saving about $1,000, $900.
Whichever works for your lineup. If you have the money to get up to Amendola, do that. If you don't, play Grant. They're both great plays, both cash plays.
Carty, what is the blitz saying as far as FanDuel wide receivers? Who's in the mix for you? Do you happen to have it pulled up by chance?
I know. I mean, you mentioned Judy before. I know Judy was in some. I know Terry, I think, is in a bunch. It's been a little while since I looked at FanDuel. I don't play FanDuel. Go another question. I'll come back to it.
Grant, pick one of these two for the last piece. Deontay Johnson in that win game for Pittsburgh, and I don't want to just chase everybody away, but, just caution flag to some degree. Deontay Johnson or Devontae Parker?
Parker. And someone's asking me my favorite prop. Parlay Russell Wilson over a half touchdown with Dalvin Cook over 31 yards over on DK. Nice little 20% ROI there.
Hey, let's give a plug to what we did the other day on the morning grind, and it's evergreen. So you guys listen to whatever. Once you start dabbling into the sports gambling world, Grant, I know we it seems like we combat. No, Grant's really, really sharp when it comes to sports gambling. He's really, really sharp when it comes to deposit bonuses, and he'll give you all the little angles as far as how to take advantage of the deposit bonuses that are out there on a plethora of sites. And I know a bunch of states have ratified sports gambling. We're at like 20 or so. When you're ready to sports gamble, give that a listen for sure. Carty, we got to step aside and get out of here and make way for Tambo and Notorious. They're going to be talking, they'll be showing off the lineup HQ and probably talking about some golf too, I imagine. Probably splitting those Masters lineups. Carty, give me your favorite correlation play of the day before we get out of here.
Terry McLaurin and DeAndre Swift or Amendola. I think that's the sneaky one. I think that's a great play.
Grant, see it, raise it.
Michael Thomas with anyone or Josh Allen and Diggs.
Michael Thomas with anybody?
Yeah, correlates perfectly. You get 30 points for whatever else.
All right. Hit the like button, subscribe, stick around. We're not going anywhere where we are, but we'll be relieved in just a minute by Tambo and Noto, and then Roth and everybody else will be coming in to close us out. Thank you guys all after luck. Good luck on week 10. Thank you to Devin for producing. He's Grant. He's Carty. I'm Dean. This was football. We're out of here. Holler.
We're here back in the Fantasy Bar. 6 of my favorite plays for week 10 on FanDuel and DraftKings, including cheap plays at the running back and tight end position, what my favorite quarterback wide receiver pairing is for the week, and an absolute stud at Beast of the Week that's going to be under 10% owned. Who is it? Belly up to the Fantasy Bar and find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 10 edition Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack. Good to be back here once again in the Fantasy Bar talking FanDuel and DraftKings. 6 of my favorite plays for you. Fresh off the tap. Guys, do me a favor. Make sure you click that thumbs up button here on the YouTube page. Really helps us out, guys. That's the tip jar here in the Fantasy Bar, so I greatly appreciate that. At the same time, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Get notified when the videos are coming out. All right, before we talk Week 10, let's take a quick look back at Week 9, and one of those weeks, nobody really killed you here. Nobody really helped you either. Chase Edmonds, definitely a disappointment, but encouraged by the 25 carries he got in that game. So not our best week, not our worst week, but we move on here to Week 10. All right, let's start at the running back position. Going to be a fun slate here. We're going to go road underdog. Normally a spot we don't want our running backs, but I like this spot here for James Robinson of the Jaguars. Now again, normally we prefer home favorites as our running backs, but that doesn't mean we can't play guys on the road, especially guys getting the workload that James Robinson gets, guys that are involved in the passing game like James Robinson is, and guys in a tremendous matchup against this Green Bay Packers defense, who is absolutely horrific against the run, second most fantasy points allowed per game to the running back position. They also give up a ton of rushing touchdowns, which obviously these numbers help equate to giving up a ton of fantasy points, but touchdowns. And do we expect Jacksonville to go out there and score a ton of touchdowns? No, we don't. But what if they do stay in this game? What if this game is competitive? We have to ask ourselves these questions and play out these narratives. But let's say they're not. Well, guess what? Green Bay also gives up the most receiving yards to running backs. So if they're in a play from behind position, they get down early, which is certainly what Vegas is indicating here, then James Robinson can have a big day that way as well. The point is, there are many different outlets and ways for James Robinson to have a massive game here. And we've seen him have 30-point games when Jacksonville's gotten blown out of the building. So again, a lot of ways he can get there. Price is fair for a guy getting workhorse touches. We don't have many workhorses left in the league. James Robinson, not in the best game environment, the way most people are going to look at it. I see a lot of different ways he can get there. Definitely one of my favorite running backs of the week. All right, let's go to tight end position, get you some value here, save some money with Austin Hooper of the Browns. So Hooper was really starting to come on here. I mean, he didn't have any earth-shattering games, didn't win anybody tournaments, but the point is the targets were there in the offense. He was really starting to get on the same page with Baker Mayfield, averaged almost 8 targets a game those few games before he went out with injury. Now we take Odell Beckham out of that lineup. And I know we may have the return of Nick Chubb. That's only going to help this passing offense. It's going to help open things up here for guys like Austin Hooper and the Texans. This is a defense we've been targeting all year long. Not going to stop now, especially with tight ends. Second most fantasy points per game to that position over the last month. They've really struggled here. This is a bad defense, a bad secondary, and an offense I think is going to be able to do whatever they want. 3,900 really jumped off the page here for Austin Hooper. I think he finds the end zone, has a big day here against the Texans. All right, moving on to our next play here in the fantasy bar. We're going to go back to the running back position. We're going to go with Kenyon Drake of the Cardinals. Now this one basically is Arizona running back. Whoever it may be, this is the person I want. Drake's price, super cheap. If he's back, I think he steps right back in to that starting role. Yes, Chase Edmonds is going to be involved, no doubt. Yes, Kyler Murray is going to steal some touches on the ground, some rushing yards, some of that upside, absolutely. But at 4,900 on DraftKings, at just $6K on FanDuel, in a game they're playing a defense that is not good against the run. 22nd in DVOA this season are the Buffalo Bills. Second highest team total on the slate, only trailing the Green Bay Packers here at almost 30 points here for the Arizona Cardinals. So again, if Drake's back in there, I want him. If it's Chase Edmonds, I want to go right back to that well. We mentioned in the open, 25 carries. They clearly wanted to get him involved. The production wasn't great, but whoever it may be, if it's Drake, I want him. If it's Edmonds, I'm going right back to the well here. The point is, this game's going to be a shootout. I want the Arizona running back here. A lot of people going to go after that Arizona passing game. I'm certainly going to do that in some lineups as well, but this gives you a way to be different. People may hesitate to get Kenyon Drake back in that lineup, but these prices just too good to ignore in a game total sitting at 56. So we like that game. Everybody likes that game. How do we get different? On the Buffalo side, I think a lot of people are going to go to Stephon Diggs. Let's go down a peg and go wide receiver, John Brown. And no issues with Diggs. No problem. Maybe a double stack here with Diggs and John Brown. But the point is John Brown back healthy, and it really showed last week. Season high in targets, receptions, receiving yards with 8 for 99 in that game against Seattle. And everybody has gotten it done against the Seattle Seahawks. Well, guess what? Everybody's been getting it done at the wide receiver position against this Arizona team, especially in the last month. Second most fantasy points over the last 4 weeks have the Cardinals allowed. We know the focus will be on Stephon Diggs. Patrick Peterson will spend a lot of time with Stephon Diggs. That's going to open things up for John Brown. The big playability he gets you. Plus, we get to sprinkle in a little bit of a revenge narrative here, returning back to where he spent so many years playing in the stadium for Arizona. The point is, high total game here. Brown gives us a way to get some exposure here, get a little different. Prices are fair, and the upside is huge. John Brown, one of my favorite mid-range receivers on the week. All right, we like John Brown. We like that game. Well, we got to like the guy throwing the ball. Let's go to quarterback and roll with Josh Allen. So yes, Josh Allen going to have some ownership, going to be one of the higher owned quarterbacks, no doubt. I don't care about ownership at the quarterback position. That's why I put chalk in parentheses never really matters. No quarterback ever gets overly owned. It tends to spread out a little bit. There's a reason Josh Allen is going to be owned. We talked about that 56-point total. A 56-point total here. A close spread with Arizona only favored by 2 as of this recording. So both teams are going to put up a ton of points. Both of these quarterbacks, and Kyler Murray absolutely in play as well. There's a reason these guys are going to be highly owned. This spread sitting at -2 as of this recording. That tells me both teams are going to score a ton of points in this game. It feels like one of those games that could go way over the total here. And these are the games we seek out. So I know a lot of people are going to be attacking this game, no doubt. We're talking cash games here. Josh Allen, a phenomenal play. Tournaments, we know the upside. This guy's gone 33 or more DraftKings points in 44% of the Bills games. Think about that for a minute. Over 30 in almost half the games they played this season. This sets up as one of those games. In fact, would not shock me to see Josh Allen approach 40 DraftKings points here in this game. Huge upside here in this matchup. Gives us a big boost with his legs as well. Loving me some Josh Allen this week against the Arizona Cardinals. All right, it's time to take a look at my favorite play for Week 10. But before we do that, guys, we're going to continue our Beast of the Week contest. All you have to do, get in the comment section, make sure you've hit that thumbs up button on the video, but give me fantasy points on DraftKings for my favorite play here of the week. The closest guess will win themselves either a free week of Rotogrinders Premium or a free Rotogrinders t-shirt. So let's wrap up Week 10, the 6th and final play here. You know, Mass, the Beast of the Week. All right, this time I promised you a stud under 10% own. We'll see what happens with the ownership. That's Jamino's department. The point is, I'm rolling with Michael Thomas of the Saints, this week's Beast of the Week. So let's
What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka Toe Tag and Tambo. Back for another edition of the Sunday NFL Lineup HQ. Go through, talk about all the pool. It's Week 10 here. It's crazy. We're moving right along. It's going very quickly. Got a special guest this week, my main man, Notorious, over there. And you'd think we'd be here to talk some Masters with it being Masters Sunday. So that is not the case, Noto. We're here to talk some football, my man. How you doing?
Yeah, I might not be able to help myself talking a little bit of Masters on here. But, yeah, excited to be on. You're my dude. I love coming on these shows with you. And I think I haven't done this since week 1. So excited to talk about the player pool and some windy games on the schedule today.
Yeah, we got some wind. We've got some, guys in the – I think most people by now will know most of the injuries, but we'll talk about them as we go throughout the show with the plays as they coincide. The good news is about it, last thing on the Masters is, yes, it's on right now, but – what do they say about the Masters? Don't start till the back 9. We'll get you there. You'll be back to it, ready to see how this thing shakes out. And the good news is we also have an afternoon slate today. 6 games. We don't ever get a situation like this where we get a bunch of afternoon games. So that's the other good news is if Noto and I steer you in the complete wrong direction, we'll be joining you in that afternoon slate. So you can check that out. For those of you that don't have access to this stuff, Lineup HQ, all the premium content that we do here on Rotogrinders, you guys definitely want to hop on, check it out. Producer Evan's going to drop the link in the chat, get you $5 off. Get in here and check it out. But Noto, we got a lot to talk about, man. You just hinted at it, the weather. How are you dealing with that this week? I think if everyone follows along with our man Kevin Roth and situations are posted out there, there's even a third game added with Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. I think everyone knew about the other 2, but talk about the games and then how you're handling them based on the weather.
Yeah, so I'm definitely not a weatherman by any means, but we have our own weatherman in Kevin Roth, and definitely want to trust him on these situations. And we saw it a couple weeks ago in Cleveland and a couple other games, and it really impacted the passing game. So the first 3 that look pretty iffy, Houston and Cleveland, he says 25-plus mile-per-hour winds, gusts up to 50, which is wild. Jacksonville, Green Bay, same exact thing, 25-plus mile-per-hour winds, strong gusts, and potential snow as well. And then Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, that's the third one that he added as the red color there on his weather report. Similar thing, strong winds, 50-mile-per-hour gusts. So I wasn't too interested in the passing games to begin with. I did want some Texans, some Deshaun Watson stacks, but probably going to get off of that now. You can look to the running game of Cleveland, and then obviously we want a bunch of exposure to Aaron Jones, but he's going to be even more popular now. And Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, I wasn't too interested in the game in general. Maybe interested in the Steelers defense with some James Conner, but for the most part, I'm going to be avoiding these passing attacks. What about you?
Pretty close. I definitely loved Watson on the Turning Takes pod. I talked with Kirkwood this week about it. I said, that was the spot I was wanting to go. Here's the thing about this game. I'll get your take in a second on Duke Johnson, because I think he's going to be popular in cash games, et cetera. But I don't think you have to avoid a guy like Cooks. That's one thing I will say. So he's a guy. I'll talk about all of them at the end. I got my list today. Everyone knows I'm always on here talking about my secondary stacks. Right? It's a tool you can use within Lineup HQ. You can go and when you add your second stack, it's a secondary stack where you can set it up wide receiver opposite of a wide receiver tight end, or a running back with a defense of the same team up here. You can mix this around. I love this tool for when I'm building my own lineups, but I like to think about them throughout the week and write them down as I go down. And one of the ones that I had was, definitely you could use Duke Johnson and go across from a guy like Hooper for the other side with Houston and Cleveland I'm talking about here in the weather game. Or you could also go Cooks. I think Cooks would be a good leverage play. He's a similar price point, kind of like how you have John Brown for the Bills as a guy that you could play as a cheaper priced guy versus a cheaper priced running back, right? You're looking at the positional stuff. And the thing about Cooks is he can just catch like a 5-yard pass and then just take it. So I really don't mind that. It's just one piece of that game that I would still stick with. Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. I did like the Pittsburgh pass side a little bit, but not enough. And I am with you on James Conner. Love that Pittsburgh defense paying up for probability. I don't think they're going to be that high owned, right? If you look at it here, they're 8%. It's nothing really to worry about too much there. There's some other ones that are much higher owned. And then the Green Bay game, I don't know, like that one's not, besides Jones, who everybody is on. I mean, that's the big conversation. So you like Jones this week, I believe, right? You're typically playing this higher dollar single entry stuff, similar to when we're talking PGA. What is your take first off on Duke? Because we just talked about him in the weather. So Duke Johnson, you're still good with him. And then what about Aaron Jones? Give us your take on him, that how you could use him in tournaments, or how you could go a little bit different to get unique.
Yeah, I'm definitely still good with Duke Johnson. Obviously going to draw the start today for David Johnson. I was hoping, actually it might be a benefit that there is a lot of wind in that game if Deshaun Watson isn't able to push the ball down the field. Maybe he's checking down to Duke a little bit more, and played pretty well, in the second half of last week's game with David Johnson out, and he's cheap. So I think the chalk running back, we'll get to him in a minute. That's kind of the free square of the slate. And then you can pay up for Aaron Jones. I mean, I was on him to begin with. Jacksonville, they're my team, but they are atrocious. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. And Aaron Jones is one of those guys. He gets 15 carries a game. He gets 5 targets a game, and he's going to do a lot with them. It's a potent offense, and he's going to get a lot of the red zone work as well. I know Devontae Adams has been getting all the touchdowns lately. Maybe it swings back in Jones's direction this week, especially with the weather. We see, the numbers on wind games and snow games, and typically – the running game gets the biggest boost in those situations. So love Aaron Jones. You can stack him up with the Packers defense. And the other situation that I want to monitor is Kenyon Drake. He's questionable. It sounds like he's going to be a game time decision. That game is on the late slate, and Jones, Duke, and Mike Davis are all on the early slate. So that could be a situation where if you lock in your 3 running backs and then Drake is out, then you can't get exposure to Kenyon Drake. So it's something I want to monitor, get exposure to Chase Edmonds, who had 28 touches last week, and he's playing at home in a good matchup. So I would like to get him if I can, but we won't know his status until later.
Yeah, I got a hot take for that game. It's that Drake is going to be in and Chase Edmonds is still going to smash, just because everybody is moving them out of their lineup and taking them out. He still had all the work last week. It was a bad week. It happens, but I think there's a spot here, and Drake really didn't do much all week. So even if he gets announced in, it's going to be something we find out later in the day. You could definitely, drop it down at that point, but I've got Chase Edmonds in a lot of tournament lineups still, and I'm probably going to hold even if the news comes out. If the news doesn't, I'm even happier, because I don't know if a lot of people are leaving themselves that opportunity or that space in the back. Obviously, with your flex spot, make sure you're leaving room. Get the last guy in the flex spot if you can. Make sure, and if you're using lineup HQ, that's going to automatically happen right here in your build rules, you'll see. So it's going to get your flex player has the last time no matter what. So that's one thing there. Let's get to it then, Noto. This is the talk, the conversation everybody wants. What do we do with Mike Davis? Now, listen, I know you're using him because obviously it's, like you said, a free square, $4,000. I got conviction on the fact that in a high dollar, single, smaller entry, smaller field, whatever you might call it, I think it's just automatic, right? You pull the trigger. But I want to get your take from a little bit different perspective here. If you were playing 150 lineups this week, or let's just say 20 plus, right? To be fair, because some people playing the $3.20 max, different things, maybe they're in the mini max 150. By keeping those two things in mind, how would you use Mike Davis this week? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so single entry, I think you just play him. I usually just look to play the best plays, get some correlation in there, and then, build from there. But there's definitely a case to fade him in MME, at least be underweight on him. You look at his last 3 starts. Against the Bears, he put up 12.5 fantasy points. Against the Saints, he put up 8.6. And then against the Falcons, he put up 8.7. If he gets anywhere close to that, 8 to 15, you're not going to need him in these large field GPPs. I know he's going to get a lot of work. I know he's going to get, some targets in the passing game, but it's a tough matchup against the Buccaneers. The Panthers are using Curtis Samuel a lot more, both in the running game and on these shorter passes. And then you get huge leverage on the field if you want to target, the passing game of the Panthers, because everyone's just going to play Davis and then avoid the likes of, Anderson, Moore, and Samuel. So I think there is a case to be made to be underweight on him and to get overweight on, some of those pass catchers.
Yeah, you nailed it. Samuel, you mentioned that's my guy. I'm actually about 25% Mike Davis this week. It could blow up. I know some sharper guys will just put the free square in and go 100%, lock them in, and then, get their upside elsewhere and deal with it as far as ownership's concerned. But for me, I just think there's other paths to get there. The more and more that Kirkwood and I talked through it on the Tourney Takes pod just kept leaning me that way. And there was just so many other guys in here. Did you have any other guys that stand out to you as far as contrarian plays go then? Let's say you're not going to use them. Doesn't have to be at the same price point. I think what I'm looking for, just for me in general, some guys I mentioned in the chat already, there's different ways to go. Tampa can really grind these guys down. So there's reasons to get away, but I'm really looking for just different build styles, because that's the one thing. Not only do I want to get off of him, it's not just that I want to pivot to another 4K running back. Not that there really is one, but I don't just want to change my lineup like that. I want to go to a completely different build style and try and get unique that way, using some of these guys in the 6K range, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, even the guys at 5K. We talked about Duke Johnson, obviously, but I like DeAndre Swift. I like Antonio Gibson, 5,600. So who are some of the guys that you like that might be a little bit different if in tournaments you were going off this chalk at running back?
Yeah, a couple guys that I like. James Conner. A lot of people talked about the Steelers going with no running back sets last week against the Cowboys, but they were down early in that game, and Conner didn't look great anyway, so they were airing it out. To this game, strong winds again, 50-mile-per-hour gusts in that one, and they should be playing with the lead against the Bengals. They're playing at home, so I don't mind going back to Conner. We currently have him projected at 6%, and he's 6.9K. I think that's certainly interesting. We know Cincinnati can't really stop the run, and he certainly has a path for 20-plus touches. Both the running backs for the Browns are also interesting. You got Chubb and Hunt. You get the feeling that one of them is going to go off. I don't know which one it's going to be, but the Texans' worst run defense in the NFL, and Cleveland's got a pretty good run-blocking unit. I had interest in Jacobs early in the week, but it kind of looks like he's going to be missing 3 of his offensive linemen, potentially 4, which is a big concern. And Denver, they're a decent defense to begin with. So I like Conner. I don't mind the guys from Cleveland. Miles Sanders is interesting. Everyone's always scared to play the guy coming off the injury, but we've seen it a couple of times where if the guy's going to be healthy and active, and I think he put in a full practice this week too, they're going to put him out there. Pretty good matchup against the Giants. And the final guy, James Robinson. Again, whenever there's snow, whenever there's a lot of wind, you kind of expect the running game to get more work. And James Robinson just gets a ton of touches, never has too high of ownership. And even though they are going to be trailing likely against the Packers, there's still a path for him to succeed because he does get a lot of work in the passing game.
Yeah, I like the opposite side too, right? I mean, some people probably use both. I don't know about that. If you have any thoughts on Jones versus Robinson together, but I like using Robinson against that situation. If you're going to go off of Aaron Jones, you can get a little bit different that way. I do like Miles Sanders, who you mentioned quite a bit. I think that's one. Him and Chubb, I guess. The thing about Chubb and Hunt is that the Hunt was still getting there when Chubb was healthy, but he was also, $1,000 or $2,000 cheaper. Now that they're $100 apart, I'm just going to go with the guy that should get the work coming back, and that, we've seen plenty of big games out of himself. So I'll stick with Chubb in that one. Trying to think of anybody else down here. I mentioned DeAndre Swift. I like DeAndre Swift with the Detroit defense as a secondary stack, just, going through. I like Antonio Gibson on the opposite side in some lineups, using it that way. I mean, both these, the one thing I worry about Detroit defense is getting some talks this week. And we don't talk a lot of defense on it, just, stands out because I'm talking about using Swift with it, is that I do worry a little bit about, everyone just looks at the name and says Alex Smith. I don't know if Alex Smith is going to come back and be good or anything like that, but it's more so my thoughts are that they try and protect the guy. We've seen Dalvin Cook and Aaron Jones. This is why I like Antonio Gibson, just destroy the Lions on the ground. You've got Alex Smith in there who you think they're going to want to protect at least a little bit. And don't they just, what is the opportunities for a defense like Detroit? That's just one of my thoughts. And I know a lot of people are talking about cash games and questions there, who's okay and safe in cash. I think some people are using the Detroit D in cash this week on both sites. And that's just a thought process there. So we're going to lean into quarterback anyway. And that's kind of a segue. Well, any thoughts on that with the Detroit defense going against Alex Smith? I can't imagine you're on Alex Smith at the quarterback position, but any thoughts from the other side, just where there's other defenses that you could go to there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with them. Anytime there's a home defense where they could be playing with the lead, I don't hate it. Alex Smith did have 3 interceptions last week, but he's captain checkdown. I mean, he gave McKissick 14 targets last week, I think. He's not going to look to throw the ball down the field all that often, and the game is indoors. I think it could be a high-scoring game. I don't know. Defense is one of those positions where if it's going to be chalky, I don't mind just going elsewhere. It's so volatile to begin with. So if you want to put him in there, that's fine. I don't really have any strong takes on it. And then, the running backs in both the running backs in that game are interesting, with being, Antonio Gibson and Swift. I think both of them are interesting, especially on PPR sites.
Yeah, producer Devin's throwing some of the actives in the chat. He also mentioned, too, remember that Roth and the crew, Christy, they're all coming up after this, so they're going to go through some more of that weather stuff for you guys, so we don't got to spend too much more time on that as it pertains to the slate, Noto. Here's the next big one, cash games first. People want to know, right, at the top, this is almost 30% of the ownership in, what we're looking at as far as what we expect in tournaments here with Allen and Murray. They'll be the cash game quarterbacks. Which side do you lean for your highest dollar stuff, Murray or Allen?
Oh man, it's like picking between, ice cream and a cookie. I think both of them are awesome. Kyler Murray has had the highest floor of any quarterback in the NFL this season, him and Russell Wilson, and he's playing at home. Hard not to like that. And he just gives you such a high rushing floor. I know Allen does the same thing, but Kyler's like almost baked into 50 yards per game at this point on the ground. So I slightly lean Kyler, but Allen's going to be my next favorite play at the quarterback position when it comes to cash games. So for me, I like Kyler, but I certainly don't mind going either direction.
Yeah, I would lean Kyler if it was me. That's just I know they both rush. I know they both do it all. Like you said, it's tough. I just don't think the $500 is enough when I'm already spending 7.5. Normally I'll say that's a lot. $500 is a lot, but if I'm already spending 7.5, I'm just going to spend 8. Kyler Murray's having, MVP style year. Josh Allen's had a couple bad games. People were anointing him as the MVP early, but if you look at what Kyler's done against, Cam's big rushing year, Lamar's MVP year, all these numbers and stuff you're flashing across, he's the team at home. Buffalo had some more stuff happen late in the week with guys on, cornerbacks and things out. So I just feel like, they've got Tre'Davious White's a little bit banged up, and even then maybe some hurt feelings after DK Metcalf still took care of him last week. So I think that Kyler's the way to go here. I would just find the $500. Like I said, there's ways to go about it within these 7K wide receivers when we get there. You can stack up Kyler, obviously, a couple different ways. I really don't mind, though, with both of these guys. I think you got Diggs, who's going to be very popular, which we normally in this, segment are going to talk about some wide receivers and stacks anyway to keep it going as far as time movement. But I think that Allen and Diggs is popular. I like an Allen and Brown stack. I think Brown back. We saw it last week already, had a good week, but Brown makes them all better. I just, I think the upside is still there at a lot of the other guys in that 7K range, Metcalf being one of them who people are ignoring this week. So I like Allen with Brown. If I did that, I'd probably find room for Metcalf and look at it as if everyone's running Allen and Diggs, they're probably using Mike Davis. I can leave Mike Davis out of it, get Mike Brown for a little bit more as a cheaper guy at wide receiver, and then plug in Metcalf as the guy that everybody would be playing Diggs in that spot. So just trying to leverage up a couple times there for the larger field stuff. With Murray, I really like Chris Kirk, right? He's got Christian Kirk. So he's got a matchup now that got a little bit better. And even if that the case is that Diggs is on Hopkins, I think Hopkins can handle him just fine. But I do think that it'd be good to go to Kirk in that matchup. He, a 75+ yard touchdown, very possible to kick the game off early, and then we get a back and forth. So those two we like. Noto, who else do you like? So the chalk here is Goff, Wilson, Herbert, Rodgers. Maybe talk to me about some of those and then some others that you like at the quarterback position.
Yeah, so Goff's definitely interesting. Look at the Seahawks. I think they're on pace to give up the most passing yards by far in the history of the NFL. They're ranked dead last in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks, dead last in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. And Goff's going to essentially throw to two guys in Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. I slightly lean Woods in that stack, but if I was building a bunch of lineups, I would have stacks with both, Goff Woods and Goff Kupp. And then the Buffalo game, it's hard. It's hard to have a real preference. You go with Kyler. You can certainly play him with Hopkins. It looks like Hopkins is going to be pretty low owned this week. Everyone is looking at his game log, not seeing a ton out of him. And then he's also got a likely matchup against Tre'Davious White. So I do think a lot of the ownership will flow to Kirk, but rightly so. He has 5 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. You mentioned the deep threat that he offers, a 75+ yard touchdown, certainly in the realm of possibilities. And on the other side, I actually don't mind the double stack with Diggs and John Brown. I think that's where you're going to get most of the targets from Josh Allen. And then if you don't get any rushing touchdowns, it's going to be a big day for that double stack. So a lot to like in that one. And yeah, those chalky stacks are probably my 3 favorite of the week, but they're all in pretty good spots.
Yeah, I like the Rams. You talked about it a little bit there. Woods and Kupp, though, I think people are struggling with that. Your lean is Woods this week, I believe, correct?
Yeah, lean is Woods. There's not really a strong reason why. Kupp had the 20 targets or whatever it was last week. I just don't see that happening again. And Woods does have a pretty good track record against the Seahawks. But I was listening to the Advanced Sports Analytics podcast with Blender and, the guy over at Advanced Sports Analytics. And he was saying that the correlation between Goff and Woods isn't very strong. So Woods has his best games when Goff doesn't have his best games, and the correlation between Kupp and Goff is very strong, which was a little surprising to me. I don't know if it's noisy, but I thought it was interesting at least.
Yeah, I listened to that as well, and I do like that. The thing is that I looked at it last night. One of the things is that last week Kupp got 20 targets, and so when you look at the overall season, it looks like Kupp is just smashing him. But by the way, Woods had 28 DK points last week, 11 or 12 less targets, and that's the amount of targets he's down from him on the season. So I'm with you on Woods here, and I'll tell you that's one reason. The second reason is, maybe people forget or don't remember or don't notice it. He's actually got rushing statistics to go with him. Like they use him on end arounds. They make plays for him. Kupp is sort of the security blanket and check down, but again, could be way wrong here, but I really do like using Woods. You like using Woods. That's the way I would go. You just talked about Blender, Stewart, when Brandon Adams is on there. That's a great little podcast to plug into your weekly mix if you guys aren't already on it. Another good one. And I love the correlation conversation that goes on there. A couple other guys here for me then, Noto. I guess I'll go through them. I like Russell Wilson. I already talked about Metcalf. I'm not going to go off that. I get this is one of the things where, yes, Goff is $1,200 cheaper. So then I can understand why people are doing it. But again, that's one of those things when I'm looking at building tournament lineups, I'm thinking like, if that's the path of least resistance, and obviously it's easier to build Rams stacks and just plug in the cheaper Lockett because he's cheaper than Metcalf, then of course you can do that. People are going to make that the way they go. First off, if I'm using Goff stacks, I am mostly separating them, looking to use a guy like Gerald Everett. I know Higbee's back, but Everett is just so cheap, so you could get there in the stack with Woods. Second of all, if I'm going to go, the way that I want to go is with Wilson and just use the guy like Woods or Everett on the comeback on the other side, and then go with it like Wilson Metcalf is probably enough, or Wilson Lockett is probably enough. I don't need to double stack it. Wilson could, rush in a touchdown for once. You don't see it very often, but you could see it. And then he also uses other guys that it's just too hard to figure them out and attach. So I don't really want to use like, Dissely, Olsen. They've got like, what do they got? 3 tight ends there. So I'm not going to try and mess around with that too much. If you get lucky and hit it, sure, but I don't think it's going to be enough. And then people still need to get the rest of the lineup correct. But talk to me about this other game here. Herbert versus Tua. To me, this is exciting. I know the total is down. It's 48. It's not extreme, but we've seen plenty of games with 46, 47, 48 point totals that end up being the ones that actually go over, right? Versus the other ones. So what's your thoughts on that game? Do you have a favorite side, or I think you can stack them up pretty easily too?
Yeah, so first off, I got to pour one out for my boy Tiger. Just made a 10 on the par 3 12.
No.
Hit it in the water 3 times.
Oh my gosh, man, we're missing it. I can't wait to get back and watch this stuff.
A 10 on a par 3. Ooh. Okay. Got to get back into this. So Tua
and Herbert. Yeah. It's a rough day for this, Noto, but Tua versus Herbert is where we're at here. Yeah.
We haven't seen, a ton from Tua, but last week against Arizona, pretty good game. Showed some rushing upside with 35 yards. And we should have a very concentrated passing attack over there, which makes stacking him easy. You have Jakeem Grant at the bare minimum at 3K. You also have Devontae Parker. Wide receiver 1, I know he's going to get a matchup against Casey Hayward, but if he's going to get 10-plus targets, you got to like that. I would rather stack the Dolphins side. I think it's a little bit cheaper. It's easier to stack. I know Herbert's been awesome, but, Miami's, their pass defense is really good. And I think we can get most of the production through Los Angeles' passing game through Keenan Allen. He's going to be in the slot. He has one of the better cornerback matchups of the entire slate. I think the slot corner there is like an undrafted rookie that is allowed like a 69% catch rate, something crazy like that. So I absolutely love Keenan Allen, and you can, stack Miami and then bring it back with Allen. And you'll still have so much dollars to spend. You can get up to Aaron Jones. You could even get a little bit different with Kamara, something like that. So that's kind of my way of looking at that game.
Yeah, I like that. I like that call. Casey Hayward on Parker worries me a little bit. I liked Parker when he had Fitzmagic. I call him, Fitzmaniac. Really, I should call him. He's just a wild man going out there with the big old beard, just running it in, doesn't care about anything. When he was throwing it to Parker, I really liked it. He would just force him, 10, 15 balls a game. Tua may, turn out to do the same. It wasn't crazy last game, but I like Jakeem Grant at 3,000 straight. So I like if you run Tua, Grant, we know we'll get to Allen in a second. You just talked about it, but like you said, the matchup he has is actually the best of not typically going to see Xavier Howard or Byron Jones. And you've got, you got him at 7,100. It just makes no sense. They bumped him $100 last week after going off. The week before that was even more ridiculous at 6,200. Yeah. Like, I don't know what DraftKings does with the algorithm sometimes, but I think if you go Tua, Grant, and Allen, that's more than enough of this game. You don't need to go like full-on game stack here, overweight. That all makes sense with Preston Williams out, with Hayward on Parker. I think Grant is a fine play. He got some work last week, so you can do that. And then you've got all the money in the world to spend. You don't need Mike Davis at running back at that point. You can just go and fill it in with all these stud running backs if you want. A mini or a miniature team jam them in, if you will, for this week. I don't know exactly how you would put that, but like you mentioned, Connors, you could use a Chubb, Kamara, obviously Aaron Jones. You could do all of that, or you could go extremely overweight at wide receiver as far as using the 7K guys and fit like Hopkins, Diggs, everybody that you want in there on that side, Metcalf, whatever your thoughts are over there, Michael Thomas, who we'll get to. So I do like that. The Herbert side is easy, but it's easy to get to. Is Allen. I think the one interesting piece to use on the Herbert side that I haven't heard a lot of talk about, and we'll get to tight end, is going to Hunter Henry. Because, he hasn't really done anything for anybody lately, but he's still been out there quite a bit. So I think that one is a way to go. And then I like Aaron Rodgers still. If everyone's going to be on Aaron Jones for good reason, his price is just extremely cheap, but he still throws the ball to Aaron Jones. We've seen games where Aaron Jones, we're seeing tweets about it. Look at this guy. He's a wide receiver. He looks like a mini Kamara out there catching diving passes, and they're running end arounds where he's floating out to the side for a fade and diving to catch it. Like, Aaron Jones is very versatile. So I don't think you should avoid Rodgers and Jones if you're trying to avoid quarterback, running back, and a lot of times that's the case. I don't think so for Rodgers and Jones. And then obviously Devontae Adams we'll get to in a second. Anybody else here at quarterback that stands out that you want to talk about, Noto, or anybody of the cheap guys that you could get to?
Yeah, two other situations. Angry Tom Brady, if you want to play him against the Panthers.
Up late, Tom Brady.
Up late, that's true.
They said he was on the airplane, right? Until super late last night. I'm not sure. Someone said that he got the pilot to keep him there so he could get even more angry.
There you go. And yeah, I mean, he's got so many weapons to work with at this point. I don't know who I would rather stack him up with. I'd like to see a couple games to see who his favorite target is going to be. It might end up being Antonio Brown by the end of the season, but he's still new to the offense. So you can stack him up in a bunch of ways. All those receivers are pretty cheap. And then Carson Wentz feels really ugly, but it's a good matchup against the Giants. Wentz is top 30 fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games. He's getting Alshon Jeffrey back this week, right? And Dallas Goedert ran a bunch of routes his last time out. He's one of my favorite tight end plays. So I like Carson Wentz a little bit as a cheaper option.
I like the Brady one. I don't know if the Brady up late thing matters for them. It's just, again, another thing that Kirkwood and I talked about this week was all the weapons, right? And just what they have to go after Carolina. And everyone thinks, well, they're going to run or they're going to try and do this, that, and the other. The bottom line is, we see it with Mahomes and them all the time. When your team is just that good or has that many weapons at a certain position, their goal is to win the game. To win the game, you got to score points. All they do is try and win. So they're going to do it with the way that they can get there. And the way that Tampa Bay should be able to get there pretty easily is through the pass game. They have Godwin, Evans, Antonio Brown, just a murderer's row of wide receivers. Gronk is a little bit healthier at tight end, so I definitely don't hate that call. I like the Wentz. My one low, off the board play this week was Daniel Jones, and I brought him up just because there's been Ingram talk. He's getting targets. Who knows? I know Golden Tate's active, but who's what their usage is off of him with how all the stuff he's had going on, getting into fights and off-field stuff, domestics, things like that. So they've got Shepard there as well. I think that's a way to stack it up. And then because I like Miles Sanders on the other side and think he does work this week, I've got some, where it's Jones, Shepard, Ingram with Miles Sanders on the other side. The goal is Miles Sanders does his job, and then Daniel Jones has to do his coming back. Second of a division game. I find those really only go 2 ways, but they're typically close games. So either you get a really ugly game, which if it happens, those lineups were dead anyways, so I'll take that risk. But the other way is obviously if they go off and it's just 2 bad teams that, that have some good plays that end up shooting out, and then you've got yourself a game on hand that not as many people would be there with. As far as Brady goes, the chat asked, who do you want to stack him with? I'm mixing it up. It's really hard to tell. It does seem like he has no love for Mike Evans. I know everyone says, or apparently last week, Arians was talking about Evans was wide open. That's on Brady. Got to get him the ball. Again, Brady's going to get the ball to whoever he wants to, and at this point, he needs to because he's got to bounce back after an embarrassing performance on a primetime game against Drew Brees. So, with that said, Noto, we'll move over to wide receiver. We can correlate some of the stuff here to speed along with some of the stacks that we're running, but Diggs, Adams, Cooper Kupp, Keenan Allen, Lockett, all the guys we kind of talked about are the ones getting the ownership. So where do you, with that said, where do you stand with the chalk? We kind of talked about all of them. I guess, Adams stands out to me. His ownership has dropped some since the week started. I expected that with his price being 9,000. I don't think it's easy to get there in cash games, high dollar stuff, not really necessary with all these 7K guys. But what are you doing for your builds when it comes to using this upper 7K, 6.9 and up range?
Yeah, I didn't have a ton of interest in Adams early in the week, but now that the weather's going to be bad in Green Bay, I think everyone's going to get off of him just because they saw what happened a couple weeks ago when we had those weather games. Everyone's just going to pivot to Aaron Jones. So Aaron Jones' ownership is going up. I still like him. And Adams' ownership is going down. I know we can't keep up this touchdown rate forever, but I actually have more interest in him now with the bad weather than I did with him in the good weather, which sounds a little backwards. But I just think with the ownership going down, I think you can certainly look his way in tournaments. My favorite play of the week is Stephon Diggs. We talked about him a lot with the Josh Allen stacks. Don't need to rehash that too much. I think Michael Thomas is certainly interesting. I know he didn't play a ton of snaps, last week in his debut, but they were up by like 4 touchdowns against the Bucs for most of that game. So I think he's going to get a bigger workload here. He's really the only one in that game that I'm looking to target. San Fran side's pretty ugly. I can't remember if it was you or somebody else that I heard say this, but the only starter that San Fran has in this game that they did in last year's matchup against the Saints is Emmanuel Sanders, and he's on the other team. So their whole offense is pretty much out, which is kind of crazy. I like that. I think Keenan Allen's just the safest play on the board. And Tyler Lockett, I don't have a strong take on him. I mean, it looks like he's going to be pretty popular again. A lot of the sharp minds here at Rotogrinders have him ranked really high in the consensus value rankings. But, I look at his game logs, and he just has so many duds in there. He's got that big 50 fantasy point outing or whatever it was. I fell for the matchup last week. I didn't want to play Metcalf against Tre'Davious White, so I played Lockett, and that obviously burned me. So what are your thoughts on him? Because he might be a guy that I'll be underweight on.
Yeah, I'm underweight just because I like Metcalf. Again, another one where the path of least resistance, the value play or whatever you want to call it here, as far as projections go, is going to show that he's a better play because he's much cheaper. But like you said, all those duds are there for a reason. And Metcalf, Russell Wilson is on record saying that he wants him and Metcalf to be the 1-2 combo, like that people talk about for years to come. So Metcalf is a big dude. He makes everybody look bad. People might, shy away, but because just of the price tag. But to me, I can't do that. And I like that he's got lower ownership there. And I like Russell Wilson. I already talked about that, so we won't rehash it. I guess the people want to know, Noto, and we're going to flip it around this week. Go to the bottom here. I've talked about Jakeem Grant. Still think he's great. He's showing 4%. We'll talk about a couple other cheap guys, though, and you're the Jags guy. So talk to me here about Conley, because he's the Jakeem Grant he's the 3K, if you want to call it a pivot. The other guy's only 4%, not really. So just the thought process is, I guess, using a 3K wide receiver, he would stand out as well. I know a little bit of weather in that game, but what's your thoughts on Conley for the Jags?
No, I mean, look, Luton looked okay last week, but it was a pretty decent matchup at home, and now he goes to Lambeau with the bad weather. I'm just not expecting much from him or, the Jaguars passing offense as a whole. I think they're going to try to get the ball to James Robinson as much as they can. I know Conley had the 8 targets, and I know he provides some good leverage off of Jakeem Grant, but I'm just not too interested in my Jags other than Robinson.
Yeah, I don't love it either. I guess, that'd be, a way to go if you want to be a little bit different in tournaments or something. You have a one-off like that. But, the other thing is if you got Jones in the lineup, which you probably do, I don't mind having that as sort of a mini stack now that I think about it, right? Have a little secondary stack in there with Jones and Conley, but I just wouldn't expect a full ceiling out of him, and that's what makes it a little tougher. You jam up the roster with the rest of the guys that have ceilings and not all the chalk safety plays. That's one thing I would say, right? Make sure you're getting around it that way. And then what about Josh Reynolds, $3,500 for the Rams? Everyone's talking about Kupp, Woods. You already talked about, the Advanced Analytics podcast. I believe it's correct. They don't really seem to correlate all that often. They both could have an okay game, but only one of them really ceilings out. So you got Josh Reynolds there at 3,500, showing up about 7% ownership. Not that much, but any thoughts on him?
Yeah, you don't want to play Josh Reynolds when they're missing one of their other receivers, because every time he's, the wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 in that offense, he just puts up a goose egg. So this might be the time to do it. You mentioned everyone's going to be on Kupp and Woods, and hey, man, he's had 17 targets over the last 2 games. If they get down early, I think that's certainly interesting. As I mentioned earlier, the Seahawks dead last in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. One guy that I'm looking to spend up on, we haven't really talked about him yet, is Terry McLaurin. I know we talked about Alex Smith not looking to get the ball downfield, but Detroit's secondary isn't all that good. They lost Darius Slay in the offseason, and he should, at least from the wide receiver cornerback matchup chart, it looks pretty good. There's nobody in that secondary that really scares me off of him. He should see double-digit targets indoors, and he could take one of those slants to the house. We've seen him break a few long ones this season. So do you have any interest in McLaurin?
Oh yeah, I got him tagged up here. I think like everything you just said, he's the only guy that I could see. And the thing is, again, if it fails, it fails. I'm not stacking him or anything. I like him sort of opposite of if I'm using Swift on the other side, I can use him with McLaurin. That's another secondary stack that I like, where the thought process is simple. It's if someone's going to drag Alex Smith along, it's going to be McLaurin, right? He's going to catch the ball, do things with it, and roll it out. So I'm certainly going to use McLaurin against Detroit here. It's another dome game that people aren't talking enough about. It's just one of those spots where I think you could see. And then if you look, it's still 46, 47. The total is not all the way there, but it's, again, one of those games where it could be one that just surprises everyone and goes over. It's that close to 50. If it had a 50 in front of it, people would be more inclined to go there. It's not quite there, but it's one that I think you can go to. And I don't love a lot of other plays in this range as much. Like I mentioned, I'm not, Will Fuller, not really big on that with the wind. Woods, we already talked about. We like him, so he's the guy. I'm higher on Metcalf than Lockett. You keep going. There's the Tyler Boyd birthday narrative I keep hearing about, but it's just one play at 6,400. I actually don't hate that. You could go there. He's probably the guy I would like. I don't love a lot of others. Robbie Anderson stands out to me here. He's another guy. If you want to get off Davis, I think Anderson stands out quite a bit as someone you could use there. Is there anybody now moving down to this lower 6, high 5K range that you're in on?
Probably not anybody else that we haven't talked about already. You mentioned Robbie Anderson. He's interesting. We talked about him a little bit and the other pass catchers for the Panthers. We talked about, Metcalf. I know he's up there, but I like him a little bit more than Lockett this week. So in this range, there's just not a lot that I'm really taking any stands on.
Yeah, I like Christian Kirk, who we talked about. I think, like I said, the spot opened up for him a little bit, even more so than if people were already on him. He's 11%. It's not going to be, that high of an ownership. I also like Ayuk. I think Debo, obviously Kittle's on IR. Again, it would have to be someone to drag Mullins along. I guess, in talking earlier, you mentioned Luton. I like the Green Bay defense quite a bit for the reasons you said. It's different matchup on the road, totally different atmosphere. So I like Green Bay D. And the reason I like the Saints D so much is just because Mullins, the only thing Mullins really had going for him was Kittle. Him and Kittle, for whatever reason, combined for 100 yards. Like every game they played, Kittle would get a 100-yard bonus. And now they don't have that because Kittle's on IR. So it'd be Ayuk that would have to drag him along, much like McLaurin up there. So it does put a little bit of a damper on those guys. We didn't talk a lot about this Denver and then Raiders game. So maybe any thoughts on that game as a whole? You can mix in quarterbacks, running backs, whatever else. We talked a little bit about Jacobs, but Drew Lock and who am I thinking of? Carr, right? You've got Drew Lock, Carr, and then you've got all these guys. I just thought of it because I saw Judy there who's going to play, and you've got Tim Patrick. You've got other guy, Fant, who's there as well. A lot of guys for Denver's side that you could use, and then Ruggs and the guys on, Waller, who we'll get to in a minute. So what about that game?
Yeah, certainly interesting. Carr's one of those guys. He's actually had a pretty good season. He just hasn't been able to, get his receivers playing at a consistent level. You look at Ruggs, Renfro, Aguilar, all those guys have just been so inconsistent on a week-to-week basis. So if I was playing Carr, I would definitely stack him up with Darren Waller. He's basically a receiver, a wide receiver one in this offense. He's getting, 7+ targets every single game, finding the end zone quite a bit too. And then, I like a lot of the receivers for Denver. Drew Lock, I faded him last week. I was deciding between him and Josh Allen, and that was looking great through 3 quarters. And he is just a garbage time hero. I mean, he put up like 20 in the fourth quarter against the Chargers, and then I think he had like 23 in the fourth quarter against the Falcons. So that was pretty crazy. But I think everyone's going to play Jerry Jeudy. It's like watching route running porn. He's just so good running those routes. I think Tim Patrick makes some sense as well. When he's been healthy, he's kind of been the wide receiver one. He still had 9 targets last week, so I think he's interesting. And then you mentioned Fant. Albert O's out, so you don't have to worry about him losing snaps. You don't have to worry about him injuring his ankle because he seems to do that every single week. But hey, injuries in NFL, man, they're rough, and so you can't really predict them. You just got to play your best guys. So I think that game is certainly interesting. A lot of guys that I like, and doesn't seem like ownership is going to be crazy on any of them.
Yeah, so certainly a lot of injuries this season, no preseason, the way it shook out. So that makes some sense. KJ Hamler was the other guy I was thinking of as another cheap value play, bunch of targets. You mentioned Albert O is out. So, the Tim Patricks and Hamlers, that's one I'd probably make sure if you guys are going in, you could set up a group here on Lineup HQ very easily. Something like this, Hamler, Patrick, at most a 1, just an easy way to set it up if you're building, and then you can get into it a little bit more in depth. If you guys haven't watched the Lineup HQ video from the start of the season that Blender HD and I did, Blender Head, whatever, him and I did the video, and it's awesome as far as showing off even more of that and how you use it. But keep it going here. John Brown, I already mentioned, love that play with Allen because he's showing up 8%, and it's like 25 or 26% on Diggs. Again, you can play them both, so you don't have to shy away, but I really do like going to Brown, overweight on him. A couple questions, Noto, the chat's asking. Richie James, I talked a little bit about Ayuk there for a second. Richie James, bigger role, is he just going to go back to returning punts? I think definitely still gets a role there. I'm not sure if you have any thoughts on that. And then is Aaron Jones fadeable in cash? I don't think so.
Wouldn't fade Aaron Jones in cash. I don't think you need to. I'm not going to be fading him in tournaments either. Richie James, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Look, he's going to have a bigger role, but catching 9 passes for 184 yards and touchdown, I don't think that's going to happen again. A much tougher matchup this time around. I know it's indoors, and the Saints historically have had a lot of shootouts at home, but I just don't see this game turning into that route. I think the Saints are going to dominate time of possession. I think their defense is going to be really good. So I would rather have Ayuk instead of Richie James. And what was the other question?
You already answered it, but I got one more. And I like normally, I'm talking I'm trying to relate as much as possible to tournaments, which I hope is helpful. But for you, having you on, I think it's a great call because a lot of stuff and some of the questions I see about cash, like I just don't see them. I play some cash each week. I definitely put a main lineup in. So one of them that just came up though is a 2v2. I don't mind this one. So would you go Stephon Diggs and the Bengals, which I believe are like 2,100 the min? If you had the extra $100, I like going for $200 more for the Rams at home. But the other one he has is Thomas and Rams. So never mind. I'm assuming he doesn't have the $100. So Diggs and Bengals or Thomas and Rams for DK Cash?
Ooh, that's tough. I think Diggs is probably my preferred route, but this Rams defense is super sneaky. We've seen Russell Wilson just take a ton of sacks last week, and his offensive line hasn't been very good at pass blocking. And then you got Aaron Donald on the other side. They're going to be, letting everything loose to go after Russell Wilson. So, if you could somehow switch something else around to get Diggs with the Rams, that's what my answer would be. I know that's not an option, but if I had to choose out of those two, I think I'd go Diggs Bengals.
I think because the D doesn't matter as much. I would certainly prefer if you could find the $100. I actually found a way personally to get to the Saints D. So that's just, depending on how you're building, I guess, or who you're using, I found a way to get there, but I don't necessarily love it. It's just, to me, I think, like I said, the Saints, the biggest thing for them is that I normally don't care at all about a defense, but I do feel like there's some defenses out there this week that have some ceilings to them versus these other ones may just be, you'll get some points out of the Rams and they could go off. I like where they're at. They're at home. Russell Wilson throws the ball a ton, can take some sacks. There's a lot of opportunity there, but at the same time, I just don't see a path for a guy like Mullins to be able to do a thing. So, I love New Orleans in that spot. I think there could be plenty of points scored there. Back to wide receiver. We'll get to the other ones. I see Karen. I see you got one in there. And we'll go to yours in a second. But Curtis Samuel, just want to mention this quick. I tagged it up. I like Curtis Samuel a lot. Just you look at the price tag, 4.9. It's $900 more than Davis. But if you're already going to fade him in tournaments or at least in the lineups that you are fading, like I said, I got around 25%. So I'm way underweight on Davis. 5% owned for Samuel. They were already using this guy before like that. There's other ways for him to get there. Tampa is pretty tough as a defense as a whole. So I don't mind going to him there. And then after that, there's just a bunch of guys, man. It's like, a lot of, I guess the last one to mention for me anyway, I talked about Hamler earlier, and people mentioned James only getting 3% ownership. Play him if you want, but any love for Danny Amendola? Because 3.9K, no Galladay. Hawkinson's back, but it's off of a foot injury or whatever. Do you like Amendola at all or not?
Yeah, I was going to bring him up. I always like to look at the blitz projections and sort by the point per dollar column over there. And, Grant and Amendola are going to be the two best point per dollar options on DK at least, 3.9K. Kenny Galladay's out. He had a pretty nice game last week. I don't know if he's going to be able to find the end zone, but if you need a cheap guy for cash games and you don't want to play Jakeem Grant, let's say you're already playing Devontae Parker, or you just don't want to trust anyone from the Dolphins passing attack, then I certainly think you can go Amendola. I don't know if he has a ceiling for tournaments. Maybe he finds the end zone somehow, but I think he's certainly fine. And sorry, who was the other guy you mentioned?
No, that's it. And you basically everything you just said is what I was going to say. So we don't have to spend a lot of time, but I'll just say this. If Amendola breaks a slate, I'm happy to donate to the DFS economy for a week. That's good for you guys that got that, because that's not where I go with my tournament lineups. I don't like guys that get, 6 for 60 and maybe sneak a touchdown in or whatever. I know he gets target share. I know that Galladay's out. I'll risk it more with Hawkinson. And we've seen this before too. When Jordan Reed came back off injury, there was like coach speak that said he's not going to play much. We're going to get to tight end in a second. Anyway, they say he's not going to play much. He's just going to play limited snaps. Oh, by the way, the limited snaps are every red zone opportunity we get, and he's going to catch 2 touchdowns. I feel like that would be the case with Hawkinson, and Washington can get beat up against the tight ends. We'll switch back to Karen Crooks has a question here. Noto, I like a side here. I want to hear your take, though. 3v3 for DK Cash. We've got, and it's a good one, Kyler, Jakeem Grant, and Darren Waller, or Josh Allen, Devontae Parker, and Evan Ingram.
Oh, man, I like all 6 of those guys.
That's right. As I said, this is a good one, but I got a side. What's your side?
Oh, man, that's tough.
It's got tight ends in there, too, which is good because we're going to tight end next to round it out.
I mean, just because we don't know, who Tua's favorite target is just yet, and Devontae Parker could have the tougher cornerback matchup against Casey Hayward, I'll go Kyler, Grant, and Waller.
Yeah, that's my side. Actually, that's what I have in the same lineup. So you guys can start piecing it together if you want. Saints D, talked about some other guys, but I've got Kyler, Grant, and Waller. I think, again, it's a good segue in a second here to tight end, but Waller is just unbeatable on this slate when we have no other tight ends that really matter. There's lots of guys we can play. I love it for tournaments. In tournaments, I love the tight end slate, and we'll get to it in 2 seconds. But I like Jakeem Grant for the reasons we talked about earlier. Maybe avoid the Casey Hayward stuff with the Devontae Parker side. And for me, again, $500 is a lot in cash to find in your salary, but And when I'm already spending 7,500, I will just spend 8. You guys do it all the time with a meal. If you're already spending $40 on a steak, $100 on a steak, depending on how nice your restaurants are that you're going to, there's normally like a little side plate you can get for $5-10 more. Just buy it. You're already spending the money on the steak. Get the stuff that goes with it. Enjoy your meal. That's what I'm going to do with Kyler here on this slate, and hope that I enjoy my meal at the end of the day. With that said, let's transition here. We'll go to tight end. Darren Waller, the hot topic, but he's not even the highest owned. First of all, Goddard is, right, which I like Goddard. I'll get to in a second. And then you've got, Fant, Ingram, Hooper in the wind, Gronkowski, Henry. There's a lot of other guys that you can get to along the way. So where are you at here on these chalk tight ends at the top, first off? And then as you go down, who else do you like?
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed Goddard is getting so much ownership earlier in the week. I thought he would be sneaky because he only had 1 target in his first game back, but he ran a ton of routes, was out there on, I believe, 80% of the snaps, and then they had a long layoff. I can't remember if it was a bye or they had a Thursday game, but he's had a lot of time to rest and get ready for this game. So he's my favorite, mid-range option at 4.2K, but the ownership does scare me a little bit. I mean, I'm not worried about the matchup against the Giants, and mentioned you can play him with Wentz if you want to. At the top, it's hard not to like Darren Waller. We're missing a lot of the big name tight ends this week, no Kelsey and some of those other guys. So Waller is easily the highest projected guy by 5 or 6 points. And good matchup against Denver. We mentioned, Derrick Carty, he's in a pretty good spot, and he doesn't love to throw to his wideouts. So it's a good spot for Darren Waller. And then if you're saving, we also talked about Evan Ingram. I think he's strong play as well. Philly, the one position that they've really struggled to defend this season is tight end, and the Giants have been looking to get him the ball more and more this season. So I like that. Super punts. Yeah, I was going to be Hooper, but with the wind in that game scares me a little bit. Maybe it helps with tight ends because, he's not going to be throwing the ball downfield as much. Yeah, and in terms of super punts, I think maybe Jacob Hollister. I know it sounds ugly, but he's had a little bit of a bigger role, and it's a unique way to get exposure to Seattle.
Yeah, if it's not Greg Olsen, if it's not Hollister, it's who's the other guy? They got a third guy there too, man.
Who dis? Will Disley?
Will Disley, yes. Who dis? New phone? Who Disley? This is the guy, man, right there that always gets there too. It's so bad. So when your Lockett shares all get burned up later, as do my Metcalf, it's because he threw to 1 to each tight end or something. That's the way you're going to see this thing go down. So Waller, we talked about. I like just going by price point now, some that stand out. I mentioned Gronk. I like Gronk in those stacks. I think it also would be interesting if you're going to play Mike Davis to use Rob Gronkowski across from him. It's 2 cheaper guys that, 8.7K total spent on a secondary stack doesn't necessarily blow up your lineup. Throw questions up there now, guys. I'm going to run through the rest of tight end and my secondary stacks, feed some back to Noto if he's got any, and then we'll open up to questions. We got about 10 minutes to go here. Who else? Ingram, you mentioned. I like Ebron. Played a little bit of him. I guess one of the things that we didn't talk about earlier, a couple guys, was Kamara. You can use him. I know Thomas is going to be involved. You already talked about him, but Kamara, if they're up, Latavius Murray, you could use if you think they're really going to smash. And then with Mixon out, right? Bernard has actually had a couple of pretty productive games. I know Pittsburgh is a strong front, but he can catch some passes if they do get, he's got a lot of guys. Joe Burrow's got guys like T. Higgins, Boyd, we mentioned, AJ Green. There could easily be some passer interference there, and boom, you've got Bernard up there on the line, running a couple in, different things like that. You can't really game plan for. Hunter Henry, I mentioned. I think he's great in those stacks, especially the game stacks with the Chargers and the Dolphins. I mentioned Everett. I know Higbee's there, but I like Everett still at 3.1K. And that's, probably enough to talk about. Do you play in tournaments a lot of secondary stacks, Noto, or do you look at those at all? I like looking at them because I think that's, any winning lineup, and you go back, or any sharper player always has these. If you're using results DB, anything like that, to go back and look at these winning lineups, they've got a lot of secondary stacks, sometimes even multiple, a third stack in there. What do you like any for this week, or do you follow that at all typically?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely important. We talk about the main stacks a lot, but the secondary stacks are often overlooked. And so I do like that quite a bit. I think the Eagles and Giants game is one way you could get, some secondary stacks, whether you want to do like a Ingram and Miles Sanders or something on the other side. So I like that. I was going to bring up one other tight end, Logan Thomas. I know I actually prefer him over Hollister, who I mentioned earlier. But Thomas, look, we know Alex Smith wants to check the ball down. And, if the Lions, sell out to stop Terry McLaurin, I think Thomas could have a really nice game. It's indoors, so he's 3,300. He's been getting the work. He's been out there. If you just look at the targets and not the receptions and yards, he's had a lot of opportunities this season. So for my punt, I'll actually change to Logan Thomas.
Yeah, and the people want to know Jordan Reed. I don't mind him in tournaments. I guess that's what I would say. Always a worry. It's like when we're doing golf and we got to decide if we're playing Jason Day or not for the week, or Louis or something. That's, to me, Jordan Reed in football. It's just, bad process, but it feels like an injury waiting to happen. And again, I just don't, the defense is so strong. So you can play him. Nobody's really on him. It's just not one that I love. But, I'm sure he scores a touchdown, but it's like Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas scores a touchdown. You just mentioned him. I've hated on this guy all season, though, so I got to stick with it, is that he gets a touchdown and, he has 13 points. It's a good number. It's not bad at the price you pay for him, but I'm just saying you got to watch that. It's a guy like Amendola. Like, what is their real upside? They need a touchdown to happen, basically, for them to even be relevant. So I'll get to the questions in 1 second, guys. Just a couple stacks I got here written down. People were asking about them last week. Gibson, Hawkinson, I think is a good secondary stack. I like Gibson with the D. Someone asked about another 5K running back. I like Gibson. I talked about earlier at 5,600, but Swift is only 5,100. You can use both of those guys with their defense. I like Gronk across from Davis or Curtis Samuel. Still very cheap to get the two of them. I like Darren Waller. If you're not going to use these quarterbacks and you're going a different way with other game stacks, I don't mind using Tim Patrick or KJ Hamler to keep the price down. Again, I'm looking for these secondary stacks to be like 8,000-9,000 or less combined is what I'm trying to do. Also, Jacobs. We talked about Josh Jacobs. You want to use him across from Patrick or Hamler. And then the last one I had was Jakeem Grant and Hunter Henry. I kind of like that for another super cheap one. No one's really in on either of them. Grant is getting mentions, but what will the ownership be? Not much in comparison. Maybe in cash a little bit more. People using him to fit everybody, myself included. But, I don't think he's going to be that high owned. So with that said, Noto, we'll round it out. We got about 5 minutes left. We'll start hammering out these questions. Start two between Davis, Robinson, and Gibson, PPR.
So it's like a season long. No salary matters.
I don't know. They didn't say, but I would assume so. Maybe. I just think it's good for DK though. If you got Davis, is so cheap. So I guess probably Davis and I don't know, Robinson or Gibson. That's the tough one.
I go Davis Robinson for me.
Yeah, I'll go with you there. I like that. DK Cash, Keenan and the Rams, or Lockett and the Saints.
That's easy for me. I'll take Keenan and Rams.
Yeah. I've got Keenan and I've got the Saints. So that's the interesting one for me. I found a different way to go about it. So take your pick there. That is another good one though. And that's pretty much the commonality of what people are looking at today in cash. It looks like Jordan Reed, someone else said Davis Robinson already answered it for us, which is good. We were on the same wavelength. Jones and Robinson together. Basically the question is this then, because everyone's playing, Jones everywhere. Do you like Robinson on FanDuel cash at all, or more of a tournament play? I think tournament for me.
Yeah, more of a tournament play for me. And I know we typically don't like to play running backs against each other, but just given the nature of the game and the weather there in Green Bay, I actually think it's a week where you can play Robinson and Aaron Jones in the same lineup, at least in tournaments.
Yeah, I think they're one for sure this week. The other one would be, in my opinion, Swift and Gibson, only because they're both so cheap at 5,100 and 5,600. And Swift will catch balls, as will Gibson. And I think, like I said, Washington's going to want to give Gibson the ball. He has a great matchup. Swift can still work it back the other way. They're not going to start establishing the run with Adrian Peterson if they're down, because Gibson scored a bunch early on. So I think Swift would still be in play for that one as well. Who else do we got here? Miles Sanders, love him for GPPs this week. Here's another one. 3v3, Hawkinson, Fitz, and Seattle, or Hollister, Woods, and the Bengals. Jeez, man, these are some insane combinations that I'm not even considering. But for me, probably the Hawkinson side. I actually know the Woods side. Hollister, Woods. I don't know. What do you got?
What was the Fitz side?
Seattle, Fitz, Hawkinson.
Yeah, I'll go that way, but maybe
Look for a
shuffle
new
some things
lineup,
around.
maybe. That's what I'm thinking there. What else? We got okay, FanDuel cash. Thomas, Goddard, and the Saints D, or Diggs, Waller, and the Detroit D. I'm on the Diggs, Waller, Detroit D side.
Yeah, same.
Thomas, Goddard, Saints looks good, but like we said, we've got some worry there in some other spots. We did the 5K running backs. Tyler Eifert, large field GPPs, sure. Dawson Knox with Croft out. I think sure within your Allen stacks. So I don't really like him as like a one-off. Like if he's going to get there, let's hope it's through, or if Allen's going to get there, just hope that it's not through another, like you go with Diggs and Knox or Brown and Knox and get unique that way. Definitely like that. That's how I would use that. What about, we didn't mention this guy earlier, JD, I think, or actually you did mention him, JD McKissick, $4,900. He'd be another pivot there off of Duke Johnson if you wanted, I guess. But any thoughts on that one?
I mean, it just feels like we're chasing a little bit. 14 targets, 9 receptions last week. Maybe it happens again. We talked about Alex Smith loving to check the ball down, but I'll take Gibson over McKissick this week.
Same. I like the Rams D more than the Broncos D, Matthew, for you asking cash, especially. Yeah, that.
One note on that, the Raiders are missing a bunch of linemen, but I still like the Rams.
I do like that play, actually. The last minute when the stuff comes out, or you get the finalized numbers on what the O-lines look like, you can go to the other side in the defense. They are the $2,400 defense I would use. I know a lot of cash builds come down to $2,400 that I've seen. That would be a way to go. So I may consider that one still. I guess I didn't think about the O-lineman there, but man, I don't know. I still like it with the Saints in there. I just don't see Mullins being able to do anything. Yeah. And then last question I see here for a couple more for cash. Hopkins, Goddard, Rams, or Metcalf, Hooper, Giants? Man.
Is this cash?
Yeah, DK cash. I would work on that lineup some. I think, if you got, I just, forget, I'm not going to call him out. I just think for the conversation piece of everybody that's watching, Hopkins probably unnecessary when you've got guys like Diggs, Allen, Lockett. There's a lot of guys, Kupp, Woods. There's a lot of guys you could go down to and save some money. Michael Thomas, right? Go down from there. Goddard's probably fine. The Rams are fine. So that's up to you. That's just where I would move some pieces. I don't really love Metcalf for cash. Again, you've got the other guys there that are probably a little bit safer. I love Metcalf in tournaments, and you don't really want Hooper in the Giants. So for those two, Hopkins, Goddard, Rams for me, but I just think you could still go down from Hopkins if you want. It's up to you. I mean, if you got Kyler in there, don't hate it because you're getting some correlation. It's just, it's a way to be a little bit more unique there, and you don't really have to be oftentimes in cash. And then isn't Fitzgerald the slot wide receiver? Why do you like Kirk? Here's the deal. I don't think Larry Fitzgerald's going to break a slate. I think Kirk could. And again, I'm playing in tournaments with 60,000 people. If Larry Fitzgerald and Amendola want to bring the house today and bring it all in on me, that's okay. I'm going to go watch the Masters anyway, and then I'm going to load up the afternoon slate and worry about that. And, I know they're on that, but I'm just saying I'll play the afternoon slate regardless and look for some fades around that. I got a lot of stuff I can do today besides worry about if Fitzgerald and Amendola are going to bring the house down on me. So last question, and we'll get out of here. Logan, Parker, or Ingram, Amendola, or Waller, Grant? Got to pick one. We're out.
Waller, Grant's my favorite of the three.
Same. That's what I've got. All right, guys. Noto, thank you so much, man. Always love coming on the show with you. Thank you guys for your support. Hit the like button, subscribe. Find me on Twitter at Totag and Tambo. Thank you, and good luck.
We're back in the Fantasy Bar. 6 of my favorite plays for Week 10 on FanDuel and DraftKings, including cheap plays at the running back and tight end position, what my favorite quarterback wide receiver pairing is for the week, and an absolute stud at Beast of the Week that's going to be under 10% owned. Who is it? Belly up to the Fantasy Bar and find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 10 edition Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack. Good to be back here once again in the Fantasy Bar, talking FanDuel and DraftKings. 6 of my favorite plays for you. Fresh off the tap. Guys, do me a favor. Make sure you click that thumbs up button here on the YouTube page. Really helps us out, guys. That's the tip jar here in the Fantasy Bar, so I greatly appreciate that. At the same time, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Get notified when the videos are coming out. All right, before we talk week 10, let's take a quick look back at week 9. And one of those weeks, nobody really killed you here. Nobody really helped you either. Chase Edmonds, definitely a disappointment, but encouraged by the 25 carries he got in that game. So not our best week, not our worst week, but we move on here to week 10. All right, let's start at the running back position. Going to be a fun slate here. We're going to go road underdog. Normally a spot we don't want our running backs, but I like this spot here for James Robinson of the Jaguars. Now again, normally we prefer home favorites as our running backs, but that doesn't mean we can't play guys on the road, especially guys getting the workload that James Robinson gets, guys that are involved in the passing game like James Robinson is, and guys in a tremendous matchup against this Green Bay Packers defense, who is absolutely horrific against the run, second most fantasy points allowed per game to the running back position. They also give up a ton of rushing touchdowns, which obviously these numbers help equate to giving up a ton of fantasy points, but touchdowns. And do we expect Jacksonville to go out there and score a ton of touchdowns? No, we don't. But what if they do stay in this game? What if this game is competitive? We have to ask ourselves these questions and play out these narratives. But let's say they're not. Well, guess what? Green Bay also gives up the most receiving yards to running backs. So if they're in a play from behind position, they get down early, which is certainly what Vegas is indicating here, then James Robinson can have a big day that way as well. The point is, there are many different outlets and ways for James Robinson to have a massive game here. And we've seen him have 30-point games when Jacksonville's gotten blown out of the building. So again, a lot of ways he can get there. Price is fair for a guy getting workhorse touches. We don't have many workhorses left in the league. James Robinson, not in the best game environment the way most people are going to look at it. I see a lot of different ways he can get there. Definitely one of my favorite running backs of the week. All right, let's go to tight end position, get you some value here, save some money with Austin Hooper of the Browns. So Hooper was really starting to come on here. I mean, he didn't have any earth-shattering games, didn't win anybody tournaments, but the point is the targets were there in the offense. He was really starting to get on the same page with Baker Mayfield, averaged almost 8 targets a game those few games before he went out with injury. Now we take Odell Beckham out of that lineup. And I know we may have the return of Nick Chubb. That's only going to help this passing offense. It's going to help open things up here for guys like Austin Hooper and the Texans. This is a defense we've been targeting all year long. Not going to stop now, especially with tight ends. Second most fantasy points per game to that position over the last month. They've really struggled here. This is a bad defense, a bad secondary, and an offense I think is going to be able to do whatever they want. 3,900 really jumped off the page here for Austin Hooper. I think he finds the end zone, has a big day here against the Texans. All right, moving on to our next play here in the fantasy bar. We're going to go back to the running back position. We're going to go with Kenyon Drake of the Cardinals. Now this one basically is Arizona running back. Whoever it may be, this is the person I want. Drake's price, super cheap. If he's back, I think he steps right back in to that starting role. Yes, Chase Edmonds is going to be involved, no doubt. Yes, Kyler Murray is going to steal some touches on the ground, some rushing yards, some of that upside, absolutely. But at 4,900 on DraftKings, at just $6K on FanDuel, in a game they're playing a defense that is not good against the run. 22nd in DVOA this season are the Buffalo Bills. Second highest team total on the slate, only trailing the Green Bay Packers here at almost 30 points here for the Arizona Cardinals. So again, if Drake's back in there, I want him. If it's Chase Edmonds, I want to go right back to that well. We mentioned in the open, 25 carries. They clearly wanted to get him involved. The production wasn't great, but whoever it may be, if it's Drake, I want him. If it's Edmonds, I'm going right back to the well here. The point is, this game's going to be a shootout. I want the Arizona running back here. A lot of people going to go after that Arizona passing game. I'm certainly going to do that in some lineups as well, but this gives you a way to be different. People may hesitate to get Kenyon Drake back in that lineup, but these prices just too good to ignore in a game total sitting at 56. So we like that game. Everybody likes that game. How do we get different? On the Buffalo side, I think a lot of people are going to go to Stephon Diggs. Let's go down a peg and go wide receiver, John Brown. And no issues with Diggs. No problem. Maybe a double stack here with Diggs and John Brown. But the point is John Brown back healthy, and it really showed last week. Season high in targets, receptions, receiving yards with 8 for 99 in that game against Seattle. And everybody has gotten it done against the Seattle Seahawks. Well, guess what? Everybody's been getting it done at the wide receiver position against this Arizona team, especially in the last month. Second most fantasy points over the last 4 weeks have the Cardinals allowed. We know the focus will be on Stephon Diggs. Patrick Peterson will spend a lot of time with Stephon Diggs. That's going to open things up for John Brown. The big playability he gets you Plus, we get to sprinkle in a little bit of a revenge narrative here, returning back to where he spent so many years playing in this stadium for Arizona. The point is, high total game here. Brown gives us a way to get some exposure here, get a little different. Prices are fair, and the upside is huge. John Brown, one of my favorite mid-range receivers on the week. All right, we like John Brown. We like that game. Well, we got to like the guy throwing the ball. Let's go to quarterback and roll with Josh Allen. So yes, Josh Allen going to have some ownership, going to be one of the higher owned quarterbacks, no doubt. I don't care about ownership at the quarterback position. That's why I put chalk in parentheses. Never really matters. No quarterback ever gets overly owned. It tends to spread out a little bit. There's a reason Josh Allen is going to be owned. We talked about that 56-point total. A 56-point total here. A close spread with Arizona only favored by 2 as of this recording. So both teams are going to put up a ton of points. Both of these quarterbacks, and Kyler Murray absolutely in play as well. There's a reason these guys are going to be highly owned. This spread sitting at -2 as of this recording. That tells me both teams are going to score a ton of points in this game. It feels like one of those games that could go way over the total here. And these are the games we seek out. So I know a lot of people are going to be attacking this game, no doubt. We're talking cash games here. Josh Allen, a phenomenal play. Tournaments, we know the upside. This guy's gone 33 or more DraftKings points in 44% of the Bills games. Think about that for a minute. Over 30 in almost half the games they played this season. This sets up as one of those games. In fact, would not shock me to see Josh Allen approach 40 DraftKings points here in this game. Huge upside here in this matchup. Gives us a big boost with his legs as well. Loving me some Josh Allen this week against the Arizona Cardinals. All right, it's time to take a look at my favorite play for Week 10. But before we do that, guys, we're going to continue our Beast of the Week contest. All you have to do, get in the comment section, make sure you've hit that thumbs up button on the video, but give me fantasy points on DraftKings for my favorite play here of the week. The closest guess will win themselves either a free week of Rotogrinders Premium or a free Rotogrinders t-shirt. So let's wrap up Week 10, the 6th and final play here. You know, Mass, the Beast of the Week.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to NFL Crunch Time. We're here to talk some football. We're here to talk some weather. At least I am. And I'm joined by 2 very sharp football minds, and happy to have you guys here. The chat has been loving this all year long. So Christy, Tuttle, welcome, guys. Christy, how are you?
Doing great. Looking forward to another Sunday. Like you said, a little bit of weather, lots of football. So looking forward to it.
Yep. And we got Tuttle as well. How are you?
I'm good. If you see me looking to my left, it's because I have the Masters on the screen over here. So I'll try to focus mostly those straightforward and give you guys my attention.
It ends at like 4:00, right?
Yeah, but I mean, if you don't watch now, you miss Tiger Woods, with his worst score of his career, 10 out of 3.
Yeah, that sounds a little bit fun. Yeah, I will be kind of juggling between some Masters and some football. But when there's football and there's bad weather in the games that are on TV, I'm pretty much glued to that. And I'm excited about this. This week is the worst week in weather I've ever seen. And prior to this, it was 2 weeks ago. But I think this week is worse than 2 weeks ago. And that's saying something. If you remember the Cleveland game, there's the field goal. There it went. I think we could see a repeat of that in a few different spots. Also, we're here to take your questions. I know a ton of people have questions, weather related or not. So feel free to get those in, especially towards the end of the show. And I believe you both come prepared with some prop bets. So Tuttle, why don't we start with a little monkey knife fight bet, because we got a promo going on that.
Yeah. Do you want the uncomfortable one first or the more fun one?
No, make it uncomfortable.
The uncomfortable one for me is the Russell Wilson under 308.5 passing yards. Again, completely uncomfortable, but I find myself in general shorting a lot of the Seahawks this week. I think they're really good plays, but I'm more attracted to that Arizona game. And I actually find myself playing the Rams defense a little bit on DraftKings. So I'm kind of just like, hey, you know what? Let's go all in with this take. So Russell Wilson under 308.5 passing yards. And then the more fun one is Michael Thomas over, I believe it's 74.5 is what the line was this morning. Receiving yards. I actually think they take the time to feed him this game. Allow him to eat a little bit here against a 49ers defense. So those are my two for the week.
Okay. The latter of those two seems very reasonable. Christy, what do you have for us?
Yeah, I've got a couple quarterback plays too. I went with Deshaun Watson. I'm actually going the over on, I think it was 235.5. I know with the weather
in this wind.
I know. That's why I say it's a little bit of a contrarian take for sure. But he's been so good all year. And even with Duke Johnson in there now too, and some short little passes and such, I don't know. I just kind of like the over on that one. Think he can get it done. And then I also have the over on Kyler Murray. I think he's going to have a huge game today. I think it was at 285 yards. I think they're going to, Christian Kirk and Hopkins. I think that's going to be a big game for sure. So those are the two plays that I have.
Okay. Well, those are excellent plays from very sharp people. And by the way, if you sign up for Monkey Knife Fight right now, you use our promo code Grinders, get 100% deposit bonus up to $50 and 3 months of free RG premium. That's a good deal. Plus, you get those 4 really good plays that you can lock in right now. Real quick, I want to go over the weather, and then we'll get into some plays, and then we'll take some questions. I think there are legitimately 3 games, maybe even 4. The 4th game is the evening, so that doesn't count. There's 3 games that I wouldn't play the passing attack in cash. It's in Green Bay, in Cleveland, and in Pittsburgh. We could legitimately see 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts in all of them. It's not a hype forecast. I don't do that. Legitimately 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts in all of those games. Can we see what Aaron Rodgers did 2 weeks ago? And can he dink and dunk it? And yes, that can absolutely happen. Can Adams still catch 3 touchdowns? Absolutely. If they're 3, goal line touchdowns. But it's harder to get there in this weather. That's the bottom line. It is a significant downgrade in my mind to the passing attack in all 3 of those games, both sides of the ball. And I think when you get weather like this, both teams know it. They go in thinking we're going to run the ball. We're going to try to run the ball. And then it slows the game down. There's less scoring in general. I just don't think you should play these guys in cash games. I do, again, think they're all fine in GPPs. Like we saw Adams, what do you have? I think he had 57 yards in the last win game, but he had 3 touchdowns. And, that variance can happen. So that's why you should still take a shot on these guys in GPPs. But I'm off it. I'm off all 3 of those. And then the later game, I believe it's New England is the evening game.
Yeah, right? Sunday Night Football.
It looks like it's going to pour. At least I checked a couple hours ago. So we don't have to get into that now, but that game could absolutely pour, especially for the second half. So that is worth noting. That's it from our weather spiel. If you have any questions about the weather, feel free to ask. I'll try to get those out to you. But let's get into what the people really want, and that is the football content. Christy, we like starting with you, and we like starting with QBs. Who do you got for us?
Yeah, so I think for quarterback this week, I'll start out with cash. I think what it comes down to is I think you're really looking at Kyler Murray or Josh Allen. I think you're looking at those guys. And if you want to go cheap, I think you're looking at Jared Goff, especially on FanDuel. He's pretty cheap. And if you need to save some money, I think he makes a fine play there. As far as some tournament plays, I like Russell Wilson. I think, he's going to be a lot lower owned this week, of course, because there's some bigger games out there. So I think he makes a very good play. I think, like Ross said, this isn't a cash game play, but if you look at like Aaron Rodgers, take a look at him, Justin Herbert, even Carson Wentz, in tournaments, and Deshaun Watson, I think is very risky, of course, but for tournaments, I think he could be a sneaky play if you're willing to, hope that he gets some plays, some little pass plays here and there and get some touchdowns. But I think really for cash purposes too, and tournaments, you're looking at Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, and maybe Jared Goff.
Tuttle, what do you got for us?
Yeah, a lot of the same. I think Josh Allen's the guy I'm playing with or going with on DraftKings. He provides just enough of a discount from Kyler and Wilson there where I think he's the optimal play there. FanDuel, I think you can get up to Kyler pretty easily. There's only $100 difference between Kyler and Allen there. But I think those are the cash game quarterbacks you want are from that game. From there, it's tournaments. Chris, you mentioned Wentz. I'm a little scared. I should say Roth has me a little scared about the weather in this game. But I think this is a really good spot to try to get on the Eagles offense before everybody catches up. They're starting to get healthy. 2 offensive linemen back. Alshon, I don't think Jeffrey's going to make much of a difference, but he's back. Goddard was back before their bye. Miles Sanders is back. So I think this could be a good spot to buy low on the Eagles offense. And if they don't hit this week, then I'm going to love them next week as well. And hopefully just they can stay healthy. The other really cheap quarterback I would
Real
look
quick
to.
on that game.
Yeah.
I'm not that concerned about the weather in that game.
Okay.
In the New York Philly game.
That's just a little.
It's not perfect, but compared to the 3 other games that we're looking at, there is no comparison. So don't worry about that.
So yeah, I like Wentz. And then the other cheap guy I would look to in tournaments, and I think a couple easy stack options with him or Derrick Carr going up against Denver. Carr is an easy stack candidate with Darren Waller. And then I also think Henry Ruggs makes for a decent stack option as well. And I think you could double stack both those guys just because Waller's going to get all the targets, and Ruggs, you're basically hoping, with his 3 or 4 opportunities that he breaks 1 or 2. So I think you can stack both those together. I haven't checked or rechecked, but when I was scrolling through player props on DraftKings Sportsbooks this morning, Ruggs had an insane touchdown prop. It was like plus 150, which is like stupidly low. I don't know if that was an error, but when you see those ones, you're like, why? Why is this a thing? Like, he should be plus 150 for like over 2.5 receptions, not to score a touchdown. So that one caught my eye big time. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was something going on with that one.
Okay. Let's talk about running backs here. Tuttle?
Yeah, chalk week. Big time chalk week at running back. Yeah, I will say it's awfully tempting to fade some of these guys. Like, look at this ownership on Mike Davis. Obviously eating all that chalk and cash. But like 56% owned, 60% owned, and probably higher than that in high stakes tournaments. Like, it's football, guys. Like, injuries happen, things happen
but he's 4K, and that's if he's 60% owned, that's 40 people that you're just like, haha. Bye.
Right. And the thing is here, like, even if Davis gets, 10 to 15 points at 4K, which you're completely happy with in cash games, it's also possible that there just needs a build where you have 2 running backs that go off for like 30 plus points. And the lineup construction is that you just need those guys in your lineup to have the optimal lineups. And that's kind of my approach in tournaments is like, yes, I love Mike Davis. I think he's a viable cash game option. I think he's a viable tournament option. But once you start seeing 60% owned on any player, it's kind of just like, maybe start going for that more unique lineup construction and just hoping that the raw scoring works out in your favor. Where I don't think Davis is going to flop, but, if he gets around that 15 points and then, again, you get those 2 running backs that score 30 plus, then you're probably going to be on a little bit of a unique lineup construction. That's good.
So who are those 2 running backs?
What's that?
Who are those 2 running backs for you?
So the 2 running backs I like, and you're starting to see ownership creep up on him a little bit. I mentioned I like the Eagles, or the spot for the Eagles with their offense finally getting healthy, Miles Sanders. But then I think this is like a ridiculously good buy low spot on James Conner. It's a good matchup for him on paper. You see we have him here at just 6% owned on DraftKings, 14% on FanDuel. People got burned so bad by Conner last week, and I think it was just a blip on the radar. I think it was basically, the Steelers found themselves trailing from behind. They ran a lot of empty back sets, and that was basically why Conner got phased out a little bit. But if we think Wynn's going to be a problem in that game, again, you're looking at a team that's probably going to run the ball a little bit more often. I don't like that the Steelers mix in a couple of their other running backs with Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland, but I still think I still think Conner can get like 15 to 20 touches in this spot. And if he scores 2-3 touchdowns, again, you're probably looking in the 25 to 30 point range overall. And he's going to be, again, 6% owned on DraftKings is really, really low on him. So I like him quite a bit. And then Sanders is the other guy that I mentioned. And then one other guy I'll mention, I think is kind of going sneaky, or is this a little bit more sneaky of a play. I think Jerick McKinnon He obviously doesn't project nearly as well as Duke Johnson, who's going to be chalky, or Mike Davis, who's again is going to be chalky. But he's right in between those two guys on FanDuel. He's right in that same price range. Like, I wouldn't be that surprised if he outscores either of them. Like, it's probably not the likeliest thing to happen. But McKinnon is supposedly coming off of his tired legs. He's supposedly in better shape than when we kind of had some screw ups with him. And I think it was like week 6 and 7. He kind of fell off the radar a little bit. But he was back on the field 42 of 57 offensive snaps last week against the Packers. He had that late touchdown, which helped him a little bit. But I think he's going to be on the field a lot again this week against the Saints. He's going to have a pass catching role. So again, I don't think it would be that surprising if McKinnon outscored those other chalk running backs. And that's really all you need to make a decent tournament option.
Okay, good stuff, Tuttle. Christy, what are you looking at running back? And please start with Mike Davis.
Yes, I will start with Mike Davis. I do. I think for me, it's hard to get away from him based on his price. And so, I think Duke Johnson, and Aaron Jones are going to find themselves in a lot of cash builds this week for sure. Just, kind of the way roster construction works. So I like all three of those players a lot. I like Aaron Jones just because I think they're going to be running it quite a bit more too. Like you said, some of the wind going on in that game as well. I also agree too. I think Miles Sanders makes a very good play today too. It'll be interesting to see where his ownership is, but I think he's a very good play. A couple other tournament plays that I like. I like James Robinson a bit. He's been performing really well the last few weeks. He's always under-owned. If they can somehow keep that game close, I think it's going to be because of him and, him getting a lot of rushes and things like that. So I think he's a good play. And then one I'm curious too is, I think he would have been more popular had Davis and Duke Johnson not emerged. But, Giovanni Bernard, he does not have a good matchup. But, with Mixon being out again, he's a pass catching back. He has the opportunity to, make something happen. So, at his price, I think he's a little bit of a sneaky tournament play. And then the last guy I'll mention is Nick Chubb coming off an injury. I think more so on DraftKings. I think he's maybe $6,700, $6,800. I think he's a good tournament play as well.
Okay, great. Let's go to wide receiver. Christy, what do you like?
Yeah, so at wide receiver, I like Keenan Allen quite a bit. So kind of talking cash, I guess, to start out with. I like Keenan Allen quite a bit. He's just been getting a lot of targets, putting up a lot of points. Tyler Lockett, it's hard to get away from him in cash because his price is very good on both DraftKings and on FanDuel. Devontae Adams, if you can get him, I think he's not much of a cash game, with the wind and things like that. I think there's some better plays there, but he's certainly a good play. I think Stephon Diggs in the Buffalo game, either he or John Brown, I think could make some cash game plays just because of the high total in that game. And then also, on the Rams side of it, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, some of those guys I think are good. And then Michael Thomas, we talked about him a little bit earlier. I think he is a good play. I really like his price on DraftKings. Thinks he makes some good sense there. Jarvis Landry, Devontae Parker, good cash game plays as well. And then maybe just mention a couple guys on the GPP side. I like Christian Kirk a little bit. I think if you're looking at targeting that Arizona game, he's always a little bit under-owned, and I like him in stacks. And, we talked a little bit about DJ Shark having a good matchup this week too. I think he'll carry some ownership too. Granted, there is some wind in that game, but he makes a fine tournament play as well.
Tuttle, your favorite tournament plays over for receiver?
I think it's Michael Thomas on DraftKings. We have him about 12% owned. Talked about him already with liking his yardage prop. Some other guys, Chrissy mentioned Devontae Parker. I think he's a fine option. On FanDuel, I think that last wide receiver option that you're looking for in cash games is kind of like the Deontay Johnson, John Brown range. For me, I would pick John Brown out of that bunch. I see in YouTube chat somebody wants me to retract my terrible take. I do have a different terrible take. It was kind of a joking terrible take, but I didn't hate it all that much.
Retracting, you're adding a new one?
I'm going to retract it. Chris Conley, this is the win. Chris Conley's in the win game as well. We had the whole spiel on this Wallcast about cornerback matchups and Jair Alexander and all that stuff. Yeah. I want to retract it. This one's a super, super, super terrible take, but I kind of like him on DraftKings, which is weird to say. Larry Fitzgerald, 3,900. He has shown some signs of life, believe it or not, lately. Let's see here. I'll bring up his card here. He's shown some signs of life, not crazy signs of life, but some signs of life here lately. We like this game in general. I think he's going to be one of the lowest owned pieces in both sides in terms of passing attack. So I do like him as exposure to that game as leverage off some of the other guys. So Larry Fitzgerald is my new absolutely terrible take of the week.
That is a terrible take. That is fittingly terrible. Christy, how much Larry Fitzgerald do you have in your GPP lineups?
I currently have 0 right now.
But you might
I have him in my main lineup.
You have him in your main lineup, Tuttle.
I do. I'm just running one GPP lineup on DraftKings. I have him. It's a game stack of that, and I have Fitzgerald as my.
Wow. Okay. Well,
fading Mike Davis in that lineup too, because why not?
All right. Wow. Okay. Anything else you want to cover there at receiver, or should we end it on that note?
Did we mention McLaren at all?
No, that's a good play. Yeah,
he's cash game option. I think he's borderline cash option on both sides.
Okay, great. Let's talk about tight end. Tuttle, I will let you start this. What are the good plays here?
Yeah, so tight end, it's kind of weird. We actually have a week where we have some decent options in that 4K range on DraftKings. We're not used to that. So Dallas Goedert, I think, is a good play. Eric Ebron's going to be lower owned. I think he's actually a really good option this week. Austin Hooper's only 3,900. I think he's a solid option. And then on FanDuel, it's all these guys that are the same kind of price range in that 5K price range. Goddard is my favorite of the bunch. I think he's getting under projected just a tiny bit. He's had a massive role when Ertz hasn't been in the lineup. Yes, the Eagles are getting healthier in general. They have Fulgham now. They have Rager now. So I could see some target share getting taken away from him in that sense. But I still think I like him the most in that price range. And then Darren Waller, obviously, if you're paying up. I think it is reasonable to pay up for Waller in cash games if you find a build that you like. I'm not currently doing it, but I think it's reasonable.
Okay. Christy, tight ends?
Yeah, I like a lot of those same tight ends, and I'll maybe start with FanDuel first. I find myself kind of in that, 5K range, with Goddard and Evan Ingram and Noah Fant are some of the guys that I kind of like in that mid-tier range. But I do think it's fine to get up to Waller. I know he's 7K on FanDuel, and I think, you can easily get him in there. I think he's a fantastic play. I think a couple of tournament plays. I think, TJ Hawkinson, someone to consider. I think on DraftKings too, if you're looking to save a little bit more, I know we mentioned like Austin Hooper and such, but, Logan Thomas, even if you really need to save some money, Gerald Everett. I know Tyler Higbee is back in, but Everett has been getting some looks. And I was going to mention too, on the receiver side, another guy too, if you really need things to work, is Josh Reynolds. He's a lower price guy on DraftKings that, has been getting some targets and can get you exposure, a low price guy getting you exposure to a higher price game.
Okay, excellent. Let's talk about defense. And Christy, I will let you go first. What's the play?
Yeah. So defense, if you're paying up, obviously, Pittsburgh is always a great play, but, a lot of times, you need some cheaper plays to get things to work. So like on FanDuel in particular, I like the Lions. I like Washington, both at the low end. I'm also think, the Raiders is a decent play this week too. Watt can easily give up some interceptions, and I could see that being a good play. And then at the higher end, like I said, the Steelers, and then Packers and Saints. I think if you're looking to spend a little bit on DraftKings, Saints is probably the best value option. I think they're right at 3K, so they're a pretty good value there. And then again, Washington, Detroit, Packers, Raiders probably are the 4 or 5 that I'm kind of looking at this week.
Great. Tuttle, anything different? And most importantly, what is your defense in your main tournament lineup?
Oh gosh, you're gonna love this.
Oh, all right, let's hear it.
It's currently the Rams.
Oh, you mentioned that.
Oh yeah.
I think the problem is here we have like a lot of these kind of mid 2K range defenses that I think like line up on paper is pretty good matchups, pretty decent plays. But it's like none of these guys or none of these teams generate any sort of pressure on the quarterback. I would say the Lions are probably my favorite of the bunch. If I'm going in that mid 2K range, like Alex Smith loves to take sacks. The Lions don't sack anybody, but maybe they can sack Alex Smith. And that's actually the 2v2 I'm kind of considering in that tournament lineup. I have Josh Allen at quarterback, considering Dawson Knox and the Lions for the pairing. I see somebody just mentioned Dawson Knox in chat. Tyler Croft's out. He's going to get 100% of the snaps. I've been debating Knox and Lions versus the Rams, and Logan Thomas is who I currently have in that lineup. So I might just side with the correlation and get off the Rams defense. But yeah, I like Lions in that mid-range, and then I don't think the Rams are that bad of a play at defense, even though the matchup's not great.
Okay, great. Let's really quick. We've got 6-7 minutes until lock. So let's talk favorite stacks. Christy, your favorite, what's the chalk? What are you most on? And then also give me something a little sneakier.
Okay. Well, I like the Arizona Buffalo game. That's probably one of my favorites. And, to no surprise, I think it's going to be very, very popular. As far as sneakier, I think that Giants Philadelphia game could be a little bit of a sneakier stack for some of the larger field GPPs.
Excellent. Tuttle?
I mean, I really like the Arizona Buffalo game too. I'll be underweight, obviously, on the Seattle Los Angeles game. I've already mentioned that. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my underweight stance. I liked the Bucks a lot to start the week, and Angry Tom narrative, all that. I think it's still a good game stack, but I have less exposure to that than I thought I would at the beginning of the week.
It was because they were stuck on the tarmac for 7 hours.
Yeah, there you go. The Tom Brady definitely stayed out past his bedtime.
All right, let's see. We got 5 minutes. Let's get to some of these questions. We will start, Tuttle, with you. Jay says, please rank these wide receivers in DK Cash. Lockett, McLaurin, Diggs. Thank you.
I mean, they're not all that similar price points. Diggs would be number one for me. Then Lockett, then McLaurin.
Great. We'll go to Joey Rock. He says, can I play Thomas over Kupp and Lockett in DK Cash? Christy?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could. I think Thomas is a good play over on DraftKings in particular this week.
All right, let's get to Preston, DK Cash, Kirk and Logan Thomas, or Grant and Waller?
I don't generally think of Kirk as a cash game play, but I like that side better.
All right. Let's see. Joshua, by the way, says Rams D. I love that play.
Yeah, it's a good leverage play. It really is.
Yeah. All right. Keith Kaiser says Waller and Carolina D, or Goddard and New Orleans D. I forget who's up in this, but whoever is, answer that.
I would say Goddard, New Orleans D.
Okay. Tyler Madison says this appears to be a 3v3 for you, Tuttle. Doesn't say if it's cash or tournament, which makes it hard. Let us know what site it is and if it's cash or tournament. It makes it easier to answer. Tyler Lockett, Austin Hooper, and Redskins D versus Jakeem Grant, Darren Waller, and Saints D.
One. And the general trend here is I don't really trust Jakeem Grant all that much in cash.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Ink Magma says, is Christian Kirk a good one-off? I'm thinking if he goes off, the game most likely went off.
I'm actually very high on Christian Kirk this week. I think he's, I'm using him in a lot of builds. And yeah, I do think he is a good one-off.
Okay, we'll go to Jake Lynott. He says, Terry and Saints or Thomas and Lions in cash. Tuttle?
Thomas and Lions.
You liked both Thomas and Lions. You mentioned,
yep.
Being fine with both of those plays. Sean says Christian Kirk and Saints D, or Keenan Allen and Bengals D.
Kirk and Saints D and Bengals and Keenan Allen. I'd say the first one.
Okay, excellent. Raider Nation says Swift or Duke Johnson.
Duke Johnson for cash. I don't mind Swift in tournaments though.
Hammer says in the flex, you want Chubb or McLaurin?
I would say Chubb.
Let's see. JRC says FanDuel Cash, McLaurin and the Packers and or Steelers versus Diggs and Washington D.
Is that me?
Yep.
I'm going Diggs.
All right. Cam says, is Drake a good option since he's in, or do I stay with Duke Johnson?
I would stay with Duke Johnson.
Okay. William Bynum, FanDuel single entry last piece. You want Woods or Scary Terry?
I would say that's completely dependent on lineup construction. Do you have pieces to either of those games? If you have a piece to either of those games, then play that receiver. If you don't have pieces to either of those games, then I would take McLaurin over Woods.
Raider Nation says, do I play Adams even with the wind? In tournaments, our answer is yes, right?
Correct.
Is that correct?
I was just going to say in tournaments, absolutely.
In cash, did either of you play Adams?
No, because of his price and then because of the wind, I think it kind of takes him out of cash consideration for me.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. So there's your answer. I agreed. So we're 3 for 3 on that one. Can we play the New Orleans onslaught stack? That's Breeze, Kamara, Thomas without a bring back on the San Francisco end in tournament builds? What a great question, Joshua.
No.
No. If you're gonna commit to both sides.
Yeah, you're allocating way too much salary, I think, to not have some sort of just absolute crazy shootout. You're going to need 49ers to keep pace a little bit there.
Okay. God, I love stuff like that. These are things that like I need to take into my consideration when I do this. All right. Patrick Hanna says Gibson or Fournette?
I would say Gibson.
All right. Mosey says Parker and Logan Thomas or Grant and Waller?
Again, I side with the non-Grant side. So Parker, Logan Thomas.
Okay, great. Let's see. We've got a few more questions over here. FanDuel GPP, Drew Brees.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a large field GPP, I wouldn't use him in like a single entry or anything like that, but large field, sure.
Okay, ECS, DK Cash. You were anti-Grant, was that correct? Tuttle?
Yeah, I don't love it.
Okay,
I'd prefer a different build if possible.
So
he's not some terrible play that has no chance of getting there. I don't trust it all that much.
Okay. Preston, DK Cash, tight end, Thomas or Knox?
Oh boy, I would probably say Thomas.
Brandon says Diggs and Bengals D or Michael Thomas and the Rams D and DK Cash. If this is Tuttle, he loves Michael Thomas and he likes the Rams D. So, this is DK Cash though.
Yeah, I'm not considering Bengals D at all in cash. Thomas Rams.
Okay, there you go. And that is the last question. That was well done. Hey guys, if you like this show, you should sign up for Rotogrinders Premium because we're giving you money, or at least we're giving you money off of the subscription fee. So go ahead, sign up. You get some money off and you get all kinds of great content from not just these two experts, but a smorgasbord of experts across the industry. With that, we could sit around and hang out, or we could go watch some football. What do you guys want to do?
Football.
Yeah, I think we're going to go watch some football and some Masters and all of that. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. That way you never miss one of these glorious shows. It also helps us out a little bit as well, as this is free content. So for Tuttle, for Christy, for Devin, always working hard behind the scenes. Everybody at home, we appreciate you. We love you. And we will catch you next week. You have been crunched.